welcome to the September meeting of the Children's Commission. We are all so glad to have you all here after a long and it's all relatively cool summer here in Texas. At least it didn't get over 100. You know, the work of this commission is so very, very, and so as always, on behalf of the court, I want to thank every single person for what you all do. It's time consuming. It's hard work. It's really, really important stuff. And you know it. And we appreciate every single person in the room who does not have to be here. And we all appreciate it very, very much. So thank you for being here. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for really focusing on these children and these families that find themselves in these very, very, very challenging situations and helping us do what we can to help the judiciary have the tools, the knowledge, et cetera, that they need, that we need to make sure that the best decisions are made for the very, very vulnerable families. I want to tell you that Justice Rebecca Huddle, who is my colleague and the deputy chair of the commission, who many of you know her. She is just absolutely a lovely, lovely person, a wonderful colleague. And she unfortunately is not able to be here today. So she wanted me to extend apologies for not being able to be here, but no, she's here in spirit because she certainly is dedicated to all of this. So I wanted to let you know that. So we've got a few housekeeping measures that we need to go over a little bit. We're going to break for lunch around noon. And of course, the commission is always very good to have really nice food for us to have. Otherwise, we're really not going to take any breaks. But of course, if you need to step away, feel free to do so. We've got some food back in the back here, coffee, water, we have juice. And so feel free to not feel that you are absolutely tied to your seat. We don't want this to be like jail. Remember, the meeting is being recorded and streamed live on YouTube. And while the meeting is in progress, please refrain from, shuffling around too much, whispering too much, because you'd be surprised how that can get picked up. And so be aware of that, be aware of your side conversations. And if you must say something, make sure that you are aware that it could be heard by other people. Just know. Please fill out your match forms, which are printed and placed for the commissioners in your notebooks. You'll see that there. And for other participants, there's copies at the check-in table. And this is required by the Federal Court Improvement Program grant. So it's something we're not just, harassing you. It's something we need to do. Allowable travel expenses can be reimbursed by the commission. There's printed reimbursement forms available, or you can access those forms on our website after the meeting. Collaborative council members, and we have them to the side here, wishing to provide an update towards the end of the meeting are encouraged to submit a speaking card and provide it to our staff before lunch ends, because we're going to give you all an opportunity to present whatever you feel is appropriate. Materials provided by the collaborative council members is also available at our resource table. So thank you all again for being here, for putting the hard work in that you always do, for being the dedicated professionals that you are. Really, really appreciate it very, very, very much. So now I invite you to look at tab 1 in the meeting notebook that we listed there. And this document includes the commission, committee, collaborative council members, as well as staff. And before we get going, I want to highlight a few membership changes. I am very honored, and I want to present to you Representative Lacey Hall, who is here. She is from the House, and she's the current, the current chair of the House Committee on Human Services. that really covers a lot of issues that are very relevant to the things that we deal with. And she's very committed to this, and we really appreciate that very much. As an aside, she was born in Houston, and she is in House District 138, which I must say is the district that my son, my 3 grandchildren, and my daughter-in-law, and he's a lawyer, live in. So thank you for taking care of them. I'm going to say that. Chairman, Madam Chair, thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate it. I also want to introduce one of my dear, dear friends who is just amazing. And I truly mean that. I've had the honor of working with her for working with her for many years. She is now the current chair of the Child Protection Law section, and that is Judge Aurora Martinez Jones. As chair of the State Bar of Texas Child Protection Law section, we have a standing position on this board for a person who's in that position. That's very, very good, because a lot of what the two groups do, that there's a lot of overlap, a lot of things that we have in common. So to be part of this board, I think is very, very important. We did that just recently, and I think it was a good move. Judge Bill Harris has rolled off, and that ended in June. So I just want to thank you. You all really need to get to know Judge Martinez Jones. She's here in Austin, and I can say honestly that, you know, she is such a wonderful contribution to the judiciary of the state of Texas, and we're very fortunate to have her here in Travis County. So please give her a very, very warm. We've had 3 deeply valued commissioners whose terms will expire this year. Unfortunately, Dr. Gary Blau is not here with us today, but we do hope to honor him on another occasion. We're grateful for the opportunity to thank and celebrate Judge Randy Shelton. Shelton, right here. Thank you so much. And Judge Shelton is the judge of the 279th Civil District Court in Beaumont, and served for several years as the member and chair of the Foster Care and Education Committee. Thank you so much for that work. And Corey Benbow is a longtime champion for youth and young adults with experience in foster care. And we are so fortunate that we have that needed experience. It's something that is a critical thing that we need to have. And so you're being at this table and bringing the type of insight that you have because of your experience is something that we value very, very much. So thank you very, very much for being here. Okay, so we have Holly Pickett left her role as DFP. Yeah, we're going to do those. Okay, I'm sorry. We have certificates for you, so let's do that right now. Judge Shelton, right, please come on up. Let's do that. Oh, and again, thank you so much. We appreciate you very, very much for all your work. Want to get a picture here? Let's show it this way. Okay. Thank you so much. And Mr. Corey Benbow also, thank you so very much for your work. We really appreciate you more than I can say. Much. And hang those in your living. Okay, so let's see, where was I? So Holly Pickett left her role at CPS and will no longer serve on the Legal Practice and Process Committee on our Collaborative Council. Deshawn Ellens left her role in the state office and will no longer serve as a Collaborative Council member. And Cheryl Draker joins the Collaborative Council. She has extensive subject matter expertise, and this is very important. Fetal alcohol syndrome. We welcome her and know that we will benefit from her knowledge. So thank you very much. Stand, so we know who you are.
Hi, I'm Cheryl.
Thank you very much. So I'm very, very excited to announce that we have a new Children's Commission attorney, Scott Cooley. Thank you so much. Scott has had many, many years of legal experience, so we're very, very fortunate. I think 30. Yes. Yeah, really, really. You were at McGinnis, is that right?
Yes, Lockridge for most of my career.
Those of you know, it's an excellent, excellent law firm. I know when I was looking over some of the applications, we're going to bring a lot. So let's say that I'm very, very pleased that you're going to join us. And he's going to start in October. So welcome aboard. We
Thanks so much.
appreciate it. And I would like you to please introduce yourself if you don't mind. I hope I'm not taking you by surprise, but just
Not at all.
if you,
I'm really the most proud, like you said, I started at McGinnis Lockridge, but after many years there, I opened an office in Lampasas. And that's where I first got on Judge Cheryl Mabry's appointment wheel 11 years ago. And found myself wishing I was doing CPS work 100% of the time. And that became my passion. And so I'm very thankful to be starting October 13th with a new commission, Children's Commission. Thank you.
thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to welcome Audrey O'Neill. She was recently named as Commissioner of DFPS. I'm looking around. There she is. Been a valued partner of the Children's Commission for some time, and we very much look forward to working with her. She's going to be speaking today. No. Yeah, but we really do appreciate what you do. It's just so important. I think that, as you all know, the work of, as I always say, CPS it's hard. And I certainly am always very, very appreciative of what you do. You know, CPS is so oftentimes put in this position of having to deal with people who are really, really very, very challenged. The families are challenged most of the time. And I was a trial judge many years before I had the honor of serving on the Supreme Court, and I presided over these types of cases. And I never saw any parents that didn't love their children. That's not the problem. They are just so challenged with so many things that they simply do not have the capacity to be able to do what they need to do as parents. And what happens, I think, a lot of times, because it's very frustrating for people, but the reality is, for a third party, CPS, never, to be able to come in and correct this very, very challenging situation is asking a lot. It really is asking a lot. And so I think a lot of times, CPS, the agency gets scapegoated. And I do believe that, and I understand it, but it's hard, and it's hard for you all. So I really, really want you to know how much I appreciate, and I think a lot of us appreciate what you do with a very difficult situation. So thank you very much. Okay, so now we're going to get to some business. We're going to look at our minutes from the May 9th meeting. It is at tab 2. Hopefully you all have looked at this. And so we're going to vote on it. Does anybody have any corrections? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to adopt these minutes from May of 25?
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are adopted. And now we're going to have an update from our mighty leader, the wonderful Jamie.
Yes, and then, struggling a little bit with the PowerPoint, if somebody could help with the screen. But I'll start talking to keep the conversation going. For those who don't know me, I'm Jamie Bernstein. I have the honor of serving as the Director of the Children's Commission. And we are here today to share with you our proposal for fiscal year 2026, which starts on October 1st. And as you may recall, we started brainstorming ideas for the coming fiscal year in the spring. We started in our 4 standing committees. We brought it to you all at the commission meeting. And we took it back, we synthesized it over the summer, and the result is our proposed updates to our strategic plan. So our current strategic plan is from fiscal year 22 to 2026, which means that in this coming year, we will be developing a new strategic plan. We do expect that we will have some additional program instructions from the Administration for Children and Families, specifically around continuity of court operations and emergency preparedness. We know we'll probably see that as an element of our strategic plan, and there may be other things requested of us as well. So we have our 5 goals, which you'll see threaded throughout the presentation, and our staff will go through each strategy at a very high level, but we will certainly pause at the end to hear any questions that you might have. And any strategies that are new or that have changed, you'll see an asterisk next to those, and we'll explain what those changes are to you. And then at the end, you'll hear from Patrick about our budget and expenditures for the coming fiscal year. I will say that historically, we have its formula grant, and it's based on child population, not children in care. So we have one of the larger child populations in the nation, and we do expect an increase in the award for this year, which you'll see in Patrick's financial statements. So we organize our work through these 4 standing committees, and each of the bullets here represents the strategy that we'll be talking about under that umbrella. And we've found this very helpful. We have 5 strategic goals, but 4 standing committees because the collaboration is more of a fundamental goal with those strategies. So everything lives under these 4 committees, and we're very grateful to our committee members for advising us and providing information and advice and expertise on what we should be working on. So this is our first goal of collaboration. This is really the bedrock of the Children's Commission work. We can't do what we do without collaboration. I like to say we're in the relationship business. We work with hundreds of people from around the state and really leverage their knowledge and expertise to identify what we can do as a state to improve the courts handle child welfare cases. So the first strategy here is what we're doing today. We're meeting with the Children's Commission. We'll continue to do that on a quarterly basis. We have found it to be successful to alternate in-person and virtual meetings, so we'll continue that. And you see the dates in your agenda for the meeting. So those are already set for next year. And then our plan is to continue these 4 standing committees that will also meet quarterly. Turn it over to Milbury to talk about the Collaborative Council.
Thanks, Jamie. Good morning, everyone. As you all know, the Collaborative Council is the Children's Commission advisory body. We are in regular touch with our members through our longstanding biweekly calls, and we just finished our annual meeting this morning. Council members shared their top priorities for this upcoming fiscal year. The updates were very practical, informative, and inspiring. It's really good to see where things are going well, and also to talk with each other about areas in need of improvement. Our biweekly calls and the annual meeting are part of our ongoing larger effort to provide consistent opportunities to collaborate both with Collaborative Council members and other child welfare partners.
Third strategy here is related to our communications strategy, and you can expect in the coming fiscal year a new look on our website. And that's not just for visuals, but one of the things that we really want to feature is a landing page for parents and a landing page for young adults to really help it be easier for them to access the resources that were designed for them. And we'll have a separate tab for attorneys and for judges, training, et cetera. So we're just hoping to make it a lot more user-friendly. We'll continue to use social media, specifically LinkedIn. We use that primarily as our LinkedIn profile, and share information regularly through those outlets. The next strategy here is our partnership with DFPS. In the coming year, I think the main focus will be on year 1 of implementation of the program improvement plan that resulted from CFSR round 4 last year. There are a few strategies in the CFSR PIP that the Children's Commission will be leading, and you'll hear about those a little bit later on. But we just have one of these strategies is our commitment to our collaboration with DFPS, which is also required by our grant and something that we would do anyway, because it's important to have that relationship. And then last but not least, you see an asterisk next to number 5. This is not really a new strategy, but we moved engagement with children, youth, and parents, not only in the case planning and in the court process, but also in systems improvement efforts. We move that as a collaboration goal to really underscore that this is something that is important to every single aspect of our work. And it's important to us that we send the message to the judiciary in our trainings. They need to hear from the people whose lives they're impacting, and that we in our work at a state level also need to be elevating those voices and making sure that they're a key part of decision making. So we'll move on now to systems improvement. And the first strategy at the top is our jurist in residence. And I'm very happy to say that Judge Hoffman is now done with his term as NCJOCJ president.
So am I.
We're so proud of you, and I know you did a great job, and it was a tremendous amount of work, but we're very glad to have you back. You were missed during the last year, fulfilling those obligations, and I do want to just publicly say thank you to Judge McCraw, who is always there when we ask for help. She's our phone a friend, but she's also every judge in our state's phone a friend. When they have a legal question or when anybody has a need, she always says yes. So I want to thank you both. And we really lean heavily on these two to really advise us and to lean on their expertise from their many, many years on the bench in child welfare. So we'll continue that in the coming fiscal year. Turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Jamie. Strategy 7 is around mental health and trauma-informed matters, and we have 3 areas of focus underneath this strategy. The first one is the Consortium on Trauma-Informed Court Practices. This is a statewide judicial forum, education, and discussion around trauma-informed and trauma-responsive court practices. So we'll continue that into next year. We convene for bi-monthly MCLE, and our fiscal year 2026 speaker series will be on supporting parents in child welfare cases. Earlier this month, we kicked off that yearly theme with a speaker on how parent advocates can support family reunification. And we're also planning a how-to MCLE on how to put together a family reunification day celebration that we will feature judges who have successfully done so. We have 2 other ongoing efforts under this strategy. One is to continue to add resources to our trauma-informed-texas.com webpage. And the other one is to continue to participate in the Cross Systems Trauma-Informed Care Initiative Workgroup. That's a mouthful. It's led by HHSC and it's 4 state agencies. Back to you.
So the next strategy, number 8, is around prevention efforts and family preservation. And you see an asterisk here, and that relates to expanding the strategy to really include unification as well and addressing preventing repeat maltreatment and keeping families safely together. This will include partnering with HHSC, DFPS, and others across the state. We've been very involved with Family First implementation. We'll continue to do that in the coming fiscal year as well. Strategy 9 is the foster care and education work, which has gone on since approximately 2010. This year, we expect to update the foster care and student success guide, which is really an A to Z guide for foster care liaisons and others on how to support students in foster care. We will also be updating the higher ed guide, and Chelsea Martinez is leading this work. It has not been updated since it was released in 2018, so there's quite a few changes, and really is a guide towards those higher ed liaisons and other higher education professionals to identify and serve students on their campus with experience in foster care. We are also working with TEA on DFPS on the next foster care summit. And importantly, we have a data subcommittee that's working to refine the data exchange between DFPS and TEA. And in this past, the committee has also discussed developing resources for children in behavioral health settings and how we can better meet their educational needs. We also talked about exploring a focus on younger students, as many of our resources have really related to older youth. So we haven't really gotten into the pre-K population. That's something we might look into this coming year. Okay, strategy 10 is resources for subpopulations of children in foster care. So in this fiscal year, we've worked on children who have been victims of sexual abuse, and we expect to finish that resource in the coming year. That's been a great partnership with the Office of the Governor, CAC Texas, DFPS, and many others. When it's complete, we're going to explore a resource really related to perhaps youth who run away from care. And at the last commission meeting, talked about children needing HCS spots. So that might be another subpopulation that we focus on. So we'll pull together a work group to help us develop that resource.
I wasn't sure how it worked if I had a question. So I see here, we're at the end, which I think this 10 is incredible. I see at the end in the book, it says and complex medical cases, but doesn't sit it in the background. And then up there on this, the slide 10 does not say in complex medical cases. So was there, how does that?
That's a great catch. So what we did for the strategy is we broadened it to make it possible to do other subpopulations. And that is another one. I'm sorry, I didn't have that in my notes, but we have worked in the past on complex medical cases. And we can definitely do that in the coming year, as soon as we finish this sexual abuse.
Okay, so then I see. So then next time that could be complex medical cases and just
Yes, we just broadened the strategy to give the flexibility to do more than one thing.
some.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what the change is to the strategy.
Okay, I see. Yeah, because that's a really important issue. Obviously, the sexual abuse is huge, but so are the complex medical.
Of
cases.
course.
So, Awesome.
Yes, thank you for keeping that on the radar, and we will definitely work on that in the coming fiscal year.
Thank
Bring
you.
together a group to do that. Any other questions on anything so far while we're paused? The next one is roundtable. So we already know that we will have at least one roundtable in the coming fiscal year. It's set for November of 2025. And this one is a strategy in the program improvement plan related to caregiver notification of court proceedings. And we're going to bring together people from around the state to talk about this issue and hopefully develop a uniform solution so that they regularly receive notice, and it includes that they have an opportunity to be heard. But at the commission, we also want to make sure that once they're in court, there's that opportunity, that not just the notice is provided, but that the caregivers are having an opportunity to speak when.
What night is that?
Oh, this is November 17th. Okay, the next strategy relates to placement capacity, kinship care, and community-based care. This is really a strategy related to involve with collaboration with other stakeholders who participate on the Partners for Children and Families Committee, with the Texas Alliance of Child and Family Services on their kinship care group, and other initiatives aimed at strengthening foster care and expanding safe, stable options for placement for children. So this is just about engaging with partners on those issues. The 13th strategy here is related to juvenile justice and dual status. We did receive funding from the legislature, and many of you may be aware that we have an open juvenile justice attorney position, which we hope to fill soon. And we're looking forward to focusing on judicial education and producing what I believe is the first of its kind judicial training just on juvenile justice issues. So we're really looking forward to that in the coming fiscal year. And with that, we're ready for legal practice and process, and I'll turn it over to Brenda.
Well, good morning still, I believe. So the first 14 has to do with the Legal Representation Committee. And one of the goals that they've identified and has also been identified by this group is attorney outreach. And so attorney outreach is going to be a priority for fiscal year 2026. And so in order to do that, the Children's Commission is going to collaborate with TIDC, Texas Indigent Defense Commission, and OCA to further their efforts and our efforts at attorney recruitment and retention efforts. So that is going to be a really big push. I know that's really important for a lot of you, making sure that we have competent attorneys that can represent parents and children in these cases. With strategy goal 15, and this is one of my personal favorites, and I know Judge Ferguson as well. This is the standards of representation for attorneys representing parents and children and DFPS and child welfare cases. The Standards Committee has been meeting diligently and working actively to really move the ball forward and getting a good finished product. And what we're excited to talk about is that the committee is actually in the final phases of the standards for attorneys representing children. And we are actually looking at having that completed in fiscal year 2026.
After how many years of work?
After a lot of years of work that we have been working really hard. It has taken a lot of years. It has taken so many years because it took us some time to improve upon the process. And now we've actually got that process, I think, pretty down packed. And at our last meeting, which we held last week, last Thursday and Friday, it was a beautiful thing. The committee was still engaged. They were still excited. And I was overjoyed with the progress that we were making and that we will make hopefully in 2026. Strategy 16 is supporting our efforts to certify Texas attorneys as specialists in child welfare law. And so here, one of the things that we really want to focus on is supporting that outreach to make sure that attorneys that are practicing in child welfare law know that there is a certification exam. And not only do they know that there's a child welfare certification exam, but that the Children's Commission will provide reimbursement. And so that's one of the things that we're going to be working on in fiscal year 2026. And to Renee.
Thank you, Brenda. That brings us to strategy 17, which is our convening in support of our parent resource work group and maintaining parent resource guides. So our long-awaited pre-litigation guide will be out by the end of this calendar year. We had a couple of legislative sessions that had occurred, and also we were working on really making sure that it was for the right audience, intended for the right audience. I think when we first did it, we definitely have parents and judges and other attorneys that were providing information and helping with the editing process. And we're getting to those final steps where we think we'll be able to get these last few changes that occurred in this last legislative session into it. And this pre-litigation guide will be focused on all things prior to filing a case. So it'll be a guide for parents and caregivers to be able to refer to so they can kind of understand the process better. That brings us to our parent resource guide, which was last updated in 2020. And so that guide will be edited to really focus on just the petition forward. So once you've already gotten that court-appointed attorney or you've hired that attorney to represent you in court. So that's how we're going to differentiate the two. We will also be working on a Representing Incarcerated Parents webinar, which we hope will come out in early spring of 2026. And then, of course, we will look towards completing a parent voice video project as well. That brings us to number 18, which is providing early and reliable access and information to resources for Texas families. So in addition to responding to hotline calls, the family helpline attorneys are currently focusing on outreach to across the state, prioritizing counties where the helpline has received 5 or less calls over the last 2 years. And they are also developing new resources to post on texaslawhelp.org, including a comprehensive resource and legal guide for kinship caregivers and a series of articles regarding CPS investigations. And then that brings, yes.
Who has a question?
I have a question. I'm sorry, I couldn't get your attention on number 17. I'm curious to know if the parent involvement coordinator or parents, and are they involved in number 17?
Yes, we do have some parents and other individuals with lived experience that have been on our parent resource work group, and they've also participated in giving that feedback on the guide as well.
Okay, thank you.
Moving to 19, that is our relationships with the federally recognized tribes and promoting awareness, education, and application of the Indian Child Welfare Act. We, as the commission, collaborate with our Texas 3 federally recognized tribes and partner with other system stakeholders to promote that ongoing knowledge and understanding of the Indian Child Welfare Act and its importance. And as part of that, we have participated in monthly meetings with the DFPS ICWA collab. And they reconvened just shortly this summer after summer break. So they reconvened in August, and we are talking about many things. So one of the things that we are hoping to move towards is an in-person ICWA summit in November of 2026. So I know that there's been some changes within leadership at the tribes and even within the department as to who's running the DFPS collab calls right now. But that is definitely on our radar and is something that we're hoping to work towards. And with that, I will pass it on to Jamie for strategy 20.
Thanks, Renee. So the bench book is one of our premier resources. It's getting bigger and bigger. We don't ever take anything out. We just put things in. So the 2025 Child Protection Law Bench Book will be released in October at the Child Welfare Judges Conference. And the updated version will also be available on our website as a free downloadable PDF. And we will continue to use the app Lawbox as an interactive resource for the bench book. So we're finishing, crossing all the Ts and dotting the Is for this, the 2025 version. So if you have thoughts and ideas for 2026 during non-legislative years, that's when we tend to reorganize, add chapters, move things around. In legislative years, we only focus on legislative updates. So that's what you will see in the 2020. Back to you, Renee.
That brings us to our toolkits. We have a toolkit for attorneys representing parents and children and a toolkit for attorneys representing DFPS and child welfare cases. Both of these have gone through several iterations. We've had work groups of attorneys that have helped us really get it to a great spot. So this year we are just doing internal edits on any legislative changes that need to be reflected in those toolkits. So we do hope to have those completed and online before the Advanced Child Protection Law section CLE in April. So hopefully around March, we'll have that online, and we will also have some printed copies for a small distribution at that training in April. And then that brings us to Brenda.
Thank you. Strategy 22 is a big strategy. This is really the one that Jamie was just telling you about in systems improvement strategy 11. And this is actually where this is going to live, this particular thing. And this is that caregiver notice and engagement roundtable that we're going to be having on November 17th, 2025. And really, this is really going to be an exciting time, like Jamie said, to bring in stakeholders, to bring in people with lived experience that will be able to kind of help us, inform us on some next steps, some solutions, some ideas. And so this is something that we're really, really excited about and that we're really looking forward to.
Next strategy 23 is a new one. It's something we're really excited about. Scott doesn't even know, but he's going to lead it. So.
Here.
You know, we talk a lot about the adversary hearing and trial and permanency hearings. What we really don't pay enough attention to, in my opinion, is the status hearing and the service planning. And this is such a critical piece. And we really want to make sure that we're not doing cookie cutter approach for parents and that things are narrowly tailored. So we're going to put together a group to work on service planning issues, how parents and children are included in developing the service, and then what that looks like at the status hearings. So there'll be a hearing quality aspect to the strategy as well, and something to building. Back to you, Brenda.
All right, and so this is our mediation work group with strategy number 24. And right now, the big thing that I want to tell you about is that this work group is also going to collaborate with the parent resource work group in producing that webinar for representing incarcerated parents. And they're going to be focused on looking at it from the perspective of what to do when you're in a mediation and you have an incarcerated parent, which I think is really important and central to really looking at the big picture of incarcerated parents. I don't think that you can have a webinar on incarcerated parents without having that additional component. And that's what the mediation work group is going to be collaborating with that particular group. Strategy 25, now that the legislative session is over, the Legislation and Policy Resource Committee is going to be convening ad hoc, and they're going to really be acting as a resource on the impact of legislative changes, as well as any changes in DFPS policy and court rules that affect child welfare. On to training.
Training, my favorite committee. Strategy 26 really has our annual Child Welfare Judges Conference as its main project. This October, we'll be hosting our 18th annual statewide Child Welfare Judges Conference. And we partner with the Texas Center for the Judiciary on this conference to host both this year and next year's conference. In 2025, we are actually going to be focusing on a back to basics curriculum. We're going to have a best practice series on all of the statutory hearings, as well as a session on contempt authority and legislative updates. Of course, we'll also have topical panels. Two that I want to highlight for y'all this morning are a panel called Supporting Parents Through Family Violence, Housing, and Employment Challenges, and another one called Applying Lessons from the Family Treatment Court Model to Address Recovery in Child Welfare Cases. Those are going to be moderated by Judge Shelton and Judge Martinez-Jones, respectively. Strategy 27 allows us to focus on our 30 child protection courts and their support staff. In FY twenty-six, commission staff will partner with OCA to plan and host an in-person child protective court convening for the CPC judges and their court coordinators. And it'll be great to be back together in person. In addition, for some built-in time to have fellowship together, we're also going to be planning a 1.5 day long curriculum. We'll secure a venue shortly, I believe, and we'll convene our curriculum committee soon to get their input on what the priority training topics will be. And whether it's a virtual offering, the way we did this past summer, or next year's in-person training, one of the unique aspects of training under this particular strategy is the opportunity to train both the judges and the court coordinators at the same time. As Judge Martinez-Jones likes to say, they're like a dynamic duo. For 28, I'll pass it to Renee.
Thank you. Strategy 28 is our trial skills training. We did just complete our 2025 trial skills, and we have moved that focus from the jury trial setting just to more contested hearing practices, as that is what's occurring more often, and also with that focus on the bench trial. We moved we were able to accept up to 27 participants, which is up from 21. And we did have 25 attorneys who completed the trial skills training just last week. We're currently getting their post-event surveys, and we'll use that feedback to help further develop the training to ensure that we're meeting everyone's needs. One of the things that we've already heard about is that they really liked our move from going from individual rooms to making it more like a contested courtroom setting with everyone in the same room. So that is something that we're going to try to keep for fiscal year 26. We're also going to discuss a advanced trial skills training curriculum for fiscal year 27. And Judge Ferguson, we definitely took to heart the feedback about moving it around. So we have been able to move the last 3 iterations away from Austin, and we will continue to look at different areas where we can move that training to make it easier for other individuals to attend. We still do that reimbursement. So there is that upfront cost of the hotel, but we do reimburse participants who do attend that training. So I think we're trying to look at either South Texas or West Texas for next year. And that will then take it back to Millbury.
Ms. Renee, strategy 29 is about how we create and maintain online content. As you all know, we regularly produce content for judges and attorneys on child welfare law and related matters. Our goal is about webinars. Our goal is to produce at least 11 webinars every year, and we're definitely on track to do that in fiscal year 26. Webinar topics that we have planned for FY 26 include representing deaf clients, and we'll also produce one on the fundamentals of parent representation. It's time for us to rejudge our 101 level training for parents attorneys, and so we have that in our sites. In addition to webinars, we also have the Children's Commission podcast to create online content that's easily accessible. The newest Children's Commission Conversations episodes are on mental health first aid in the courtroom and on visitation best practices. These are on our website, and we'll send out an announcement shortly with links to those episodes. We have in the works for FY 26 upcoming episodes that will feature how to talk with older youth, and as well as ways to address behavioral health issues and access related services for older youth. And we're also planning to tape an episode on education issues, something around foster care and education.
That brings us to strategy 30, and that's our partnerships with our statewide stakeholders and organizations. So we will continue to collaborate with stakeholders throughout the state, which include the State Bar of Texas Child Protection Law section, TDCAA and DFPS, of course. One thing that I continue to do is serve on the Child Protection Law section, and I'm sorry, the CLE committee. And so we are actually currently planning for the Advanced in 101 Child Protection Law course in April of 2026. An exciting new addition to that is that there will also be a 101 Child Welfare Appellate Law training that will occur for half a day as well. And so more soon on that. And that takes us back to Millbury and strategy 30.
Strategy 31 is about our regular communiques. And as you all likely know, we typically send about 4 resource letters out every month electronically. And these focus on child welfare policy, laws, practice, and training opportunities, such as the trial skills training that Renee was talking about and scholarship opportunities. These go out via email to over 3,500 attorneys, judges, court staff, and stakeholders. And all of them are archived on our website. Renee?
In support of attendance at state judicial and legal trainings, we will continue to provide scholarships for attendance at the NCJ, FCJ conferences, both their annual and juvenile justice conferences for our judges, as well as provide scholarships for our attorneys to attend the child protection law section trainings, as well as the child abuse and neglect workshop. One thing that we added last year was a general judicial scholarship, which is an opportunity for judges to ask for reimbursement scholarships to attend trainings that are not traditionally have a scholarship from the Children's Commission to attend. One thing that we are adding for this year that we're going to ask you to approve is also a general attorney scholarship, which would have the same effect to allow attorneys to attend and pay for registration fees for conferences that are more regional or state specific that are not already covered by the scholarships that we provide here at the commission. That also brings us over to strategy 33, which is me as well. And that is providing training and technical assistance to local attorneys, judges, and advocates. So this is our legal training support. If you remember last year, we had moved this under to our training umbrella. So this is really a new program that we started last year, and we want to focus on really trying to continue to get the word out about this opportunity as we are able to, we have an application ready to go, and we're able to help local and regional groups that want to put on a training near home. And so we do actually have two counties that we're working with. So we are hopefully going to put on a training in Grimes County in February of 2026. And we're also working with Hidalgo County in the Rio Grande Valley for training in March of 2026. That application process has been streamlined and it's currently available. We're going to really work on those last three things, the legal training support and the general judicial and attorney scholarships, trying to get the word out about those to ensure that everyone knows about their availability.
What we've all been waiting for, the data.
That, now you get to hear from me for the rest of the time. You know, applying obviously data-driven decisions to everything that the Children Commission does is obviously very important because we want to make sure that what we're doing is actually making a difference and moving the needle. Strategy 34, with this strategy, the data committee actually developed 4 survey questions that are related to permanency and the length of time children remain in care. And that was included in the registration process for the attorneys that are attending the Child Welfare Judges Conference this October. And so we're hoping that whatever data that we're able to collect from that survey can then be used by the data committee to guide future projects. So we're looking forward to the data that we receive from that. Strategy 35 is again utilizing all that available data. And so to kind of further that, the data committee is going to receive a brief training on DFPS's online data book, which contains a great wealth of data that we will then be able to use, as well as the CSFR final data report and all available data sources to identify whatever trends affecting the length of time children remain in care and explore factors contributing to delays, which is one of the focal points that we're really looking at within the data committee. And the data committee is also going to examine trends and the potential impacts of T3C on placement stability. So that's something that that's forward looking. That's something that we're also going to be paying attention to. With strategy 36, the data committee is going to continue to partner with DFPS to serve as a think tank as we analyze that CFSR data to identify those challenges and develop projects or initiatives that address the permanency issues that were highlighted in the review, which have to do with the length of time children are in care, remain in care, whether or not the goals for those children is appropriate, how often are those goals being looked at, changed, addressed, that sort of thing. And then once we look at the data and we continue to work with our DFPS partners, hopefully we'll be able to come up with some projects and things that we can do to really look for solutions and answers. Our next data committee meeting is going to be on October 14th, where we're going to continue to talk about those things. And thank you to Judge Brown for being our chair. Strategy 37, again, we are partnering with DFPS to provide tailored data presentations on state regional, and local challenges. And we're going to do that at the annual Child Welfare Studies Conference, where DFPS and the Children's Commission will provide data for regional breakouts. The regional breakout sessions provide the opportunity for judges to meet with regional directors from Child Protective Investigations and Child Protective Services, as well as regional systems improvement specialists. These small group discussions review jurisdictionally specific data elements and permanency outcomes. And single source continuum contractor representatives are also included in those breakout sessions with the judges if they're in a CBC catchment area. So that's something that we provide. It's kind of very data driven, and it's opportunity for judges to have that local jurisdictional data, and they're able to discuss it with amongst each other and with the DFPS or the SSEC individuals. With Strategy 38, we are partnering with OCA to support the maintenance of data collection, impact and usability of the case management system. We work closely with OCA and looking at their data, and they provide us with data, and they provide a lot of with data as well. So during the 89th legislature, OCA was appropriated funding, and they may talk about that later, to develop a case management system for statutorily defined specialty courts. This opportunity they are going to use to modernize and upgrade CPC-MS, which is the case management system that they use for the CPC courts. This initiative will ensure continued support for child protection courts while aligning with those broader efforts to enhance case management capabilities across the judiciary. And then, of course, providing us with that much needed data. And that's it.
Thank you so much. Before I turn it over to Patrick to talk about the budget, I wanted to say just a couple more things, which Brenda mentioned. Judge Brown is the chair of data. Judge Hoffman is the chair of systems improvement. Judge McCraw is the chair of training, and Judge Stuckey is not well, so he's not here with us today, but he chairs legal practice and process, and we're very grateful for their leadership. We did meet with them and Justice Huddle and Justice Lehrman as an executive committee to go over the grant proposals that Patrick will tell you about, and you see the summaries in your notebook. That was on August 28th. And then we also had what we call the all call or the all committee call on September 11th, where we shared what we just shared with all the committee members on these committees and give them a survey afterwards to hear any feedback that they had on this proposed strategies and budget. I understand it's a little confusing. What you have in your notebook is FY25. It's what's happened between May and today. And what we just spoke about was FY26. These slides will be on our website after the meeting, as well DFPS slides and the TIDC slides that you see later. Just wanted you all to know that those will be useful. But without further ado, I'll turn it over to Patrick to talk about the budget.
All right, thank you, Jamie. Just gonna direct everybody under tab 4 of your meeting notebook, and those of you joining us online, that'll be page 47. In your commission meeting notebook, you'll find our finance documents. So starting off on that first page under tab 4, we'll start by wrapping up our fiscal year 2025, and then we're going to move on to the proposed budget for 2026. This first section, I had planned to skip this first section because it hasn't changed throughout the year. It's our funds available until yesterday. So yesterday we were notified by the ACF that we received an additional disbursement of $20K. It's not much, but it's something. It changed the numbers here. So for fiscal year 2025, this brings that total to like 3.2 million. It's not reflected in this first section, but will show up as additional carry forward in future meetings. So look forward to that change. Moving down to the contracts. We do have 3 additional, the Texas Family First trainings that are still in the reimbursement process. And that'll be reflected at the bottom of this page as showing up in receivables. So moving down to the expenditure section, the first column there is what the commission had approved for FY 2025. Middle column is the expenditures actual for each of those budgeted projects. And the right column is what we anticipate still as payables for this fiscal year. That's going to be 880,000 left. Finally, this last table at the bottom combines everything above. We get a carry forward amount with the additional 20K that I mentioned, 1.45 million. Most of you may recall, I believe it was last year that we came to you and, we kind of had this, we were really heavy on our grants coming out of COVID because we had extra COVID funding. We didn't have a whole lot of our in-person trainings, which, those take up a lot of resources. And so we were giving out more and more grants, and we came to you and said, look, we're gonna not be carrying forward as much. We're only going to be able to carry it forward just 900,000, but we anticipate bringing that back up. And so this year we definitely did that. We're carrying forward into 2026, 1.45 million. So that's where we'd like to stay. And so we'll do our best to do so. If you flip the page now, see on the back of that sheet, you'll find our proposed 2026 budget. And starting from the top is the funds available, the estimated carry forward, which just mentioned at 1.45, which is adjusted for that 20K that I mentioned. Next is our estimated 2026 CIP grant. It's coming in at 2.7 million, which this is, Jamie spoke about this earlier. This is an increase of 1 million from last year. And it's the result of the CIP being reauthorized and increased by an additional 30 million for all states. And as she spoke, it's the formula grant and it's off of that. So next is our fiscal year 2026 state appropriation. And this is a fairly new line. It showed up last year and represented the COLA that all state employees received following the 88th legislative session. Up to that point, the Children's Commission has been 100% federally funded. This year, it includes that and a little bit more. The Supreme Court, on behalf of the commission, requested 2 exceptional items in its LAR that were funded. And both are related to the commission's planned work in juvenile justice, which Jamie touched on earlier. And that includes an additional attorney to oversee this work. And I'll just go ahead and reiterate that position's still open. If anyone knows somebody that's looking for some juvenile justice work, we'd be happy for them to apply. In addition to these 2 amounts, there's also a 6% increase for attorneys that was included in the rider from an 89th legislative session, and an additional 6% for all court staff. And last, but certainly not least, is our training partnership with Casey Family Programs at 10K. However, after speaking with Ann this morning, this amount is likely to increase. And with that, thank you, Ann and Judge Sage and Casey Family Programs for that continued partnership. This brings the total for fiscal year funding, $4,567,323, subject to any positive change in the future. So now we're just going to go through and we'll go through together line by line of what's included in this 2026 budget as far as expenditures. Our operating is coming in at just over 1.5 million. Commission projects, which you just heard explained through each of those goals. Systems improvement at 157K, legal practice and process at 66K, training at 293K. We have juvenile justice that represents the GR funding at 53,000, hitting that total to 568,200 for commission projects. In scholarships, we have the appellate law section scholarship. I believe I wanted to remove boot camp because it was a 101. I think boot camp was the original language. So I have it crossed out on mine, but it's not crossed out on here. So 7,500 for scholarships to that training. We're doing 12,500 to the child protection law section. Then those general attorney and judicial scholarships, which Milbury touched on, at 5,000 each. Our NCJ, FCJ judicial scholarship at 30,000. And the State Bar can CLE at 7,500, bringing total scholarship funding to 67,005. Moving down now to our grants, our training grant with the department for the regional attorney training, 12,000. We have the Texas Center for Child and Family Studies grant, PMC pilot study at 83. Texas Indigent Defense Commission and their Title IV project at 131K. Texas Center for the Judiciary with the judicial training that Milbury spoke about at 240K. and Texas Legal Services Center Family Helpline at 80. And that brings our total grants to 546,322 and total proposed expenditures to 2.7 million for FY 2026. So with the funds available that we have for this coming fiscal year and the expenditures that are proposed to you all today for a vote, we estimate our 2027 carry forward from 2026 to be just over 1.8 million. And that's gonna wrap it up unless there's any questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
So in terms of the carry forward, what generally is the commission's policy on carrying forward funds and for what you use and purpose?
So we typically like to stay about 1.4. 1.4 ensures us that if for some reason the program were not to be reauthorized, that we would have that those funds to bring over to that next fiscal year to keep our staff on, to finish up all projects that were started and to finish operations, to close out properly. You might recall, and there was a scare in 2018. And it was looking like this program wasn't going to be reauthorized. We went to our Chief Justice, Nathan Heck at the time, went to the legislature and pleaded our case, and we received some funding for that. And if it weren't for that, we'd have been dipping into this carry forward. So the policy on carry forward, I wouldn't say that there's not a magic number. It's usually something to cover operating, because a lot of the projects, you'll notice this is actually the first year in the commission's history that our commission projects are higher than our grants. We've traditionally been, although pre-pandemic, we've been a pass-through entity to a lot, and a lot of our grantees are here, and they can let you know that we've done our best to kind of step away, because the projects and stuff that the commission are doing are very important. So the policy is, let's continue to do our projects, continue to fund our grantees, and try to stay around $1 million to 1.
Right answer. Thank you.
Any questions about this or about the budget? So I hope everybody's had the opportunity to review that very carefully and look at the proposed activities, the expenditures that have been set forth for the year 2026. And so again, any questions? So if there are not, do I have a motion to approve budget? That give me a second. I have a second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is adopted. Thank you all very much for the all. Okay, now we are going to hear from the Department of Family and Protective Services. We're going to hear from Commissioner O'Neill. We're going to hear also from Erica Penrose. And we're also going to hear from Associate Commissioner, well, I'm sorry, that is Associate Commissioner, and Sierra Fisher, also Director of Analytical, whatever. So with that, I think we'd like to start with Commissioner O'Neill.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to just very briefly talk for a few minutes and introduce myself. I know almost everyone sitting around the table, but not quite everyone sitting around the table. So my name is Audrey O'Neill. I've been with DFPS for just over 2 years now, which I always say that state service at DFPS should be counted in dog years, so it feels 14. But I am, it is really just the privilege of my career to be at DFPS, not only to be in the commissioner role, but to be working alongside the incredibly dedicated public servants at DFPS. I have been in state government for about 21 years. And earlier in my career, I'm actually an accountant by training, which is very unusual that you would end up where I am. But I have had the privilege to work at many, many different state agencies over the course of my career because I worked as an auditor for many years. And I can say without question that the men and women at DFPS that dedicate their lives to protecting children and supporting families and protecting vulnerable adults, in my opinion, and I mean no offense to the Children's Commission, are some of the hardest working men and women in state government. And it is just such a serve alongside them. I did just want to talk very briefly. I also have a personal connection to the system. As many of you probably know, I served as a foster parent and as a kinship parent. And that is how I journeyed from being an accountant to now working for DFPS. I wanted to talk very briefly. Obviously, this is a moment of transition for the agency, so I just thought it would be helpful for you all to sort of hear from me what to expect. I think the real advantage to having this kind of transition where I've served as the deputy commissioner for the last 2 years, where I oversaw all of Child Protective Services, Child Protective Investigations, Adult Protective Services, and our statewide intake function. And I think the advantage to this transition, as opposed to having an outsider come in, is that we don't lose focus on our mission and focus on the very important work that is underway. We have had a really laser focus effort over the last 2.5 years now on lots of very, very critical system-wide improvement, system initiatives, and then just the day-to-day improvement. And that's the path we're staying on. We're laser focused on that continued improvement. I wanted to just highlight a few of those initiatives. And you all know many of these, and Jamie and I have talked extensively about the bumps in the road with these things, but we obviously are about not quite halfway through the rollout of Texas Child-Centered Care, which is just such a critical transition for the system that fully compensates the cost of delivering care and provides unique programming and services for each child based on their individual needs instead of lumping them into one of 5 giant categories that really did not differentiate their needs. And I really believe it is the largest transition that our system will have undergone for kids who are in conservatorship in probably the last 30 years. So that is a huge effort of focus. And I recognize while the department has made incredible progress at rolling that out, I'll share with you, we anticipated that we would have about 17% of children in T3C placements at the end of fiscal year 2025. That was what we were sort of projecting or what we were hoping for. Yesterday, we were at 32% of children in T3C placements. So that is a huge amount of progress for us. I will say there is very hard work ahead of us, not only on bringing along providers that have not made, or some providers haven't even started the transition to T3C. So that is going to be a real area of focus for the department, but also making this leap to, we've rolled it out, but I just don't think it's infiltrated the way we all operate every single day. And that is across the system, a transition that you all have to make. Of course, on the judicial side, our caseworkers, I think, are struggling to make that. Our community-based care partners, CASA, there's just many stakeholders that really have to think through how they approach every day. And that's going to be a big transition for us over the next 2 years. Obviously, the expansion of community-based care continues to be a very heavy area of focus, as I'm sure almost everyone in this room is aware. We have started stage 1 in the Bexar County with Belong on September 1st. We have a major transition coming up in the Houston and surrounding areas. We anticipate that will begin in mid to late spring of this year. And then, of course, after stage 1, they'll move into their case management. And I was just sharing with Judge Martinez-Jones that that's going to be very challenging. And we are certainly on edge about that transition because the Houston area has a lot of particular challenges about it. The main one of those is that it is where most of the residential capacity is in the state of Texas. So that remains a real area of focus for us, figuring out how to share that capacity while also engaging in the whole point of community-based care, which is to keep children in their home communities, which means growing that capacity in those home communities where it's needed. So that's going to be a real challenge for us. There's also, though, I think it's really important, and I sometimes worry about this with these huge systemic changes, is really important that we not lose focus on the day-to-day. And that is ensuring that we are focused on improving the quality and the consistency of our investigations, looking at our due process. I hate saying that every time I say it, but the process that we use to ensure due process and what changes might be needed to that going forward. Kinship, again, certainly I'm not something that I'm biased on. You're going to hear about kinship from Erica this morning after I unfortunately have to leave, but we are laser focused on supporting kinship. And I believe that we have a real window of opportunity coming to us this fall and in the spring as HHSC rolls out the new kinship verification standards. I am of all of the things that we accomplished last legislative session, the thing that I personally believe is probably the biggest game changer is expanding daycare for kinship caregivers so that we can have more. I really believe daycare is a huge barrier often to kinship caregivers. So that will be, I'm just very excited. But all of those things only work if we all know about them and all really become advocates and educators about those opportunities. And last, but certainly not least, a real focus on meaningfully engaging with families. And I do think particularly, I think there were many factors, but I think the COVID pandemic, there is an opportunity for us to really dig deep and re-engage with families. Our caseloads are low enough now that our caseworkers really should have time and bandwidth to sit with parents and meaningfully be engaging with them. So you're going to hear verbiage coming, and these changes take a very long time because we have a massive system to transform, but we are really focused on, I was very excited to hear narrowly tailored service plans, Jamie, thank you. I really want us to be focused on what are the things a parent most needs to create a safe home for their children, to keep that child in their home, or if it absolutely is not possible to keep them safely in their home, to return that parental home as quickly and safely as we possibly can so that they do not come back into care. So you'll hear a lot of focus. I really think that's just the bread and butter of focusing our day-to-day work. So you're going to hear us talking quite a lot about that. On that note, I will share with you, I really believe in this paradigm of children belong. Of course, I believe children belong with their parents. I would not be in this job if I didn't think that. But children belong with their parents, but if they cannot be safely with parents, I believe they should be with a kinship caregiver. If they absolutely cannot be with the kinship caregiver, and I think that's the exception, I think most kids can be with a kinship caregiver, I believe they belong with a qualified, high-quality foster family living in a family home. If none of those things are possible, I absolutely think there is a need for high quality, time limited residential treatment, but I believe it should be for the purpose of returning children to a family home because I believe children heal in families. So you're going to hear, I know all of those things are things that we all probably believe and buy into, but I just think it's really important that we keep that message at the front of our mind and that you hear the department talking about that and that we're accountable to talking with our staff about that so that they understand that orientation to our vision, mission, and values. Finally, last but certainly not least, I do think there's an opportunity for us to really continue to improve our partnership with the judiciary. I will tell you, before I started at DFPS, I knew no one really that was working child welfare cases in the judiciary, save one judge in Travis County, and it was not Judge Jones. But I had the privilege shortly after I joined the department, I met Justice Jarlene Byrne, and she was really just foundational in my education. One thing she said to me the very first coffee I had with her was, you have got to work on building relationships with the judiciary. So I just want to share publicly with you that I believe that is true, and you're going to see me engaging in that effort. And I strongly encourage you Jamie has my contact information. Judge Martinez Jones, I know, has my contact information. I encourage you to reach out to me when you have a concern that you think I need to be aware of. Not even necessarily case specific, although that's fine too. But I want to hear your feedback so that we can partner to build the best system that serves children and families in Texas. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and then unfortunately I have to leave commitment at 11:30, but
I have a question.
sure.
So I'm really excited to hear about seeing more efforts on keeping children at home or returning them home as soon as possible. I worry about the way that we transition that so that we don't lose child safety as well. And that's kind of something that I've been looking at. Do you anticipate that the department will keep track of data that shows the recidivism
Yes.
and the reasons why, so that we can fill in the gaps that we may have missed the first time if we do have cases that come back?
Absolutely. Yes, that's a great question. And I think I talk about this sometime as I think it's scales, if you will. That's probably the most appropriate analogy for this group. But there's really I don't know exactly where that balance is. And I do believe that at some point you trade. I mean, we all know that our system does harm to families, children and families. So that is, I think, first of all, you have to accept that as when a child is separated from their families, even if we do everything 100% right, even if that child is reunified, we have still caused trauma to that family, of course. However, I also think you have to balance that against the child safety outcomes. And so the two primary things that we are watching right now are, of course, and this is the worst indicator, but we are watching it, as child fatalities. And then secondly, recidivism into the system. We are not seeing those things increase at this point in time, but I will just say very frankly, I think it might be a little early to know, and it's going to take a long time of watching those indicators and then providing that information to policymakers to make sure that we have struck the right balance. And that is such a difficult, don't envy that position. It's hard to strike that balance.
Hi, good morning. So first of all, I want to say that it is a breath of fresh air to hear that there's going to be such a robust effort in kinship placements, and then also hopefully a focus on fictive kins as well, if that kinship placement is not possible. But I'm wondering, is there also going to be an increased focus on the extended care, our seal placements, maintaining data on the discharge of our youth from those placements and reasons why they're being discharged? I'd like to speak with you offline about something recently that just occurred, but I'm just wondering if that will be also part of this grant initiative in, of course, not reunification of a child, of a young adult is in a seal placement, but also maintaining some type of safety and security and consistency for that young adult who is still receiving services from the placement, and the placement is receiving government funding. Just wondering if there's some type of data that's being maintained or will be maintained regarding their discharge from those placements.
I'll have to let Sierra speak if she even knows to the very specifics of what we have now, but we do have quite a bit of data, I think, available on that. I'd be interested and certainly open to a discussion about whether there's data we should be collecting that we might not be collecting. I will share, many of you probably know this, but we were incredibly grateful to have a new case management system funded in the last legislature. And I should also forewarn you, we are a state agency. It will take a long time to have that system up and running, but we are really starting those efforts. And this is the moment to look at, is there a data point that we need that we don't have? But just bigger picture, I absolutely think looking at that in such important transition age of youth is critical for us. And I will share that we unfortunately have received a very significant reduction in federal grant funds for transition aged youth. And we're really navigating that carefully as we can at the department. We want to have as absolute minimal impact on what a transition aged youth is actually eligible to receive as possible. And that reduction it is not because of a change in federal policy. It is because the federal system, their allocation is simply based on the number of children in care and the percentage of children in care compared to other states. And as you all know, we have done an outstanding job in Texas of reducing the number of children who are not in foster care when they don't need to be. That impact does not affect older youth exactly the same, but we have experienced the same funding decrease. So really working through, and again, I think a lot of that is back to the basics and really focused on those individual conversations with youth and just like careful case management, right? But at the same time, we have a bit of an uphill battle in front of us. We had a 23% reduction. I don't remember if I said that number a minute ago in our Chafee funding for transition aged youth. And that is a very, very heavy hit for the system. But yes, happy to talk with you.
I know you talked about kinship care and fictive kin, and that is near and dear to my heart because I was here and actually worked that program in DFPS when it first started in 2006. So I'm really excited about that, the work that you all are going to be doing. My question is, how, with the retirement of your fatherhood specialist, how will you then focus on looking at fathers and fathers' families?
We're having a very active conversation about that. Eric and I were just talking about that yesterday. And you're going to see a new person that is responsible for that. We're in a real moment of transition in terms of what should DFPS look like to support the new model of care, both like how we have changed investigations, our growth and alternative response so that we are as least intrusive with families as possible, which I think is actually a really important place to engage fathers. What FBSS, what our family-based safety services look like, given that our removals have decreased and therefore you have children and families receiving FBSS services that have very high needs in some cases, and have we really evolved to meet those needs? And finally, last but not least, which was the initial driver of all of this, the transition to community-based care. So there are so many big system changes happening. So we are trying to be very deliberate and thoughtful each time we have that kind of opportunity. So I think what you will likely see is an agency that's not just focused on fatherhood support within Erica's shop and in CPS, but really that's a more sort of global dedication to that resource. And I think that will be coming very soon.
That rolls into something I was thinking with FBSS. Is there some tracking that's happening as we are seeing less removals of how many families are seeing investigations and needing those FBSS services again and again and again? And kind of reevaluating that a little bit as well.
I mean, yeah, well, I hesitate to say reevaluating. It's a very delicate situation. Our job is to implement the laws passed by the legislature. And if a child does not meet the threshold for immediate harm or potential for immediate harm, then it is not appropriate for us to file a removal petition. And I do think that is going to create situations where sometimes you have the possibility for families to come back multiple times. That being said, I completely, wholly agree that, again, that's something for us to, number one, be able to provide policymakers information about, but also looking at how we are meeting, why did they come back? Did we not do what we needed to in FBSS the first time? Is the service not available in FBSS to meet that family's needs so that they don't re-enter our system? So I think that is really where we're focused, is what could we change about our practice? And I mean, of course, the routing to FBSS versus to removal, that's never going to be 100% right every time, but really making sure that we're reflecting when there's a negative safety outcome or otherwise about what systemic change, what practice or policy change there might need to be into that.
So one of the, I think this is a question and an opportunity for you, but also just to make sure that everyone is aware about DFPS going under sunset this interim. The self-evaluation report is incredible. I looked at several state agency reports. I was by far the most impressed and grateful for the, I think, really intentional reflection that DFPS did as part of that self-evaluation. I really encourage everyone to look at that. And also there's a lot of opportunity to provide feedback as part of Sunset. And so I think, I just want to make sure that that's something that the commission is promoting and making sure the judiciary is aware of as well. Because I think that, you know, they have a really unique perspective about what's happening in the child welfare system. But I was hoping, and I don't know if you or Erica just want to provide, you know, like a couple of sentences about each of the sort of pain areas or recommendations that you made as part of the self-evaluation.
Sure, that I can't believe I didn't think to mention that because it consumed my life for the summer. So the self-evaluation is a major part of Sunset, and it really is like peeling back your own onion, taking a hard look at your stinky parts and then figuring out what do we really need to work on. So there is a section of the Sunset report. Our report is just under 300 pages long. HHSC report's over 1,000 pages long. So I think we did a pretty good job, but it's a great handbook to what to expect, or to CPS and DFPS and APS as a whole. But there is a section, I mean, don't go read the whole thing. It's just a good reference. There's a section that's called major issues, and every agency is tasked with looking at what are the major issues they face. Ours is about 11 pages long, I think, if I remember correctly. So it's a very hard, dense read, but it's not long. And the 4 issues that we highlighted are the consistency and quality of investigations, continuing to enhance that, along with access and timeliness of due process and access to records. That's issue 1. Can see why it's dense just with the number of things I described in that one issue. Issue 2 is challenges and sort of next steps around capacity in the system and the rollout to community-based care, and what some of the challenges are with that rollout, both with us as in an oversight role and partnering and supporting with the SSCCs both. Issue number 3 is one you've probably heard us talk about ad nauseum, access to services. It's really us talking about DFPS is entirely reliant on services outside of the DFPS system. So if those services, if behavioral health services do not exist outside of our system, they also don't exist in our system. It's not just behavioral health. We also talk about access to service in rural areas, access to family services, such as services that would be delivered through FBSS, and of course in a reunification stage of service. And then last but not least, we cannot talk about the challenges that DFPS faces without addressing the critical nature of our workforce, turnover in our workforce, and supporting our workforce. I will share with you, and we testified a number of times during legislative session, it sometimes keeps me up at night, the safety threats that our staff face. I get emotional just saying it, in their day-to-day jobs. And we send them into very, very scary situations that they absolutely have to respond to. And most of the time, that's not what they walk into. But the reality is they're dealing with people who are often in a moment of crisis. And we don't all respond our best in moments of crisis. And our staff have experienced safety concerns that I just really feel like we as a department have a responsibility to share what those are, so that we are supporting them in the best ways that we possibly can.
What kind of security accompanies those workers whenever they're going?
They usually go by themselves. They can, if we know a family, if we have a record in impact that a family has threatened a worker, then they certainly can request someone that accompany them. But they also have a 24-hour window or a 72-hour window that they're working on. And I don't think, I mean, I'm sure you guys, many of our workers are relatively young, and they think they'll be okay. And they sometimes find themselves in threatening situations. And then when something happens to them, we work hard to circle around them, but there is not a lot that we are sometimes able to do for them. So really working on that. All of those things, that's like one narrow avenue. Also, it's just like a healthy culture that retains and supports work that is incredibly hard every day. so that we have the most senior and tenured workforce that we can to best support families.
So is there an initiative that's looking at those issues? Those are issues that concern me greatly.
Yes, we have had, we've had a retention initiative going on since 2023. We've had a significant reduction in our turnover since 2022 and 2023. You cannot take your eye off the ball. It has to be all hands on deck all the time. So we have a wide range of retention initiatives going on. And we're sort of always looking at what is the next thing. But like, just by way of example, we have a new employee wellness initiative. We've developed a whole wellness paradigm for our employees. Getting them to think about that in the field when they have a family to see is a real challenge. I mean, it's things like, you can't work a 9-hour day and then drive 6 hours to take a child to placement. We have to talk about a safer solution for you and for that child. So it's sort of, again, back to basics.
Audrey, specifically talking about staffing, I know we've talked several times about legal staffing. Do you have any update or any insight for us on how that initiative is going?
Tell me more specifically.
Your legal staffing and there's
Their short tenure within legal.
short tenure, but also vacancies and those issues.
Yeah, I do think we've seen, I don't know exactly what the vacancy rate is in legal right now. I can find out. We have seen a reduction in our vacancies. It's sometimes stunning to me. I have a hard time seeing why attorneys would come and work for us. By way of my sister is a child protection attorney in another state, and it is absolutely unbelievable how much more money she makes as a child protection attorney in another state than our attorneys make at DFPS. And so I think money is a huge part of it, where attorneys are concerned, but certainly manageable workloads, a supported environment. I think that's less of the barrier in legal, and it's more finances. So we are really hopeful that the increase that we got from legislative session that all attorneys received in legislative session will continue to reduce that turnover. Okay. Thank you so much. And again, feel free to reach out to me with anything I can help you with.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much, Commissioner Elliott. Okay, and now we're going to hear from Associate Commissioner. So if you could please go on.
I go loud. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us today. We are going to be presenting some data outcomes that we are currently seeing. This is not the final data outcomes for the fiscal year that you'll see when they get published on the internet. So just bear that in mind as we go through the PowerPoint presentation, because when it finally gets published, it might look just a little bit different, but I wanted you to kind of have a sense of where we think we might fall as we ended our fiscal year. And I do have Sierra with us this morning because she will, if you have questions about data or how did that come, what are you measuring, how did you get there, Sierra is going to be my person to help us with that today. So our data presentation is really going to focus more on the CVS side, and we're going to be talking about the data around our outcomes for children in foster care. So I would be remiss if I don't start off with what our process looks like and how children come into conservatorship. As you can see, it starts off with a call to statewide intake, and then from there it can get closed. Audrey mentioned alternative response and/or an investigation. Now you can see that most investigations get closed. A very low percentage of children get removed from investigations. And then you'll see that 11% are referred over to receive additional services through family-based. And those are provided, those are in-home services where the child continues to be in their community with the parent. And our goal of family-based safety services is to prevent children from coming into foster care. When I think about how important that stage of service is, and I look at how many children we're serving in a year, I think about how many children we were able to keep out of foster care, which is that's what we want. You can see that alternative response is almost sending the same percentage of cases to FBSS with alternative response. They do a lot of hands-on with the family. They engage a lot of community resources. If they feel like the family still needs more beyond that, then they do have the option of referring it over to FBSS so that we can continue to work with the family. So you can see between those two stages, we have about 22% that are being open for family-based.
Erica, does that mean all removals fall within the 3% you have identified as substitute care?
So that's for investigations. What I don't have up there is the family-based removal rate. And we didn't capture that, but we can get that.
So I have a question as well. So in the 11%, is that including court-ordered services cases for FBSS?
Yes, so as
Do you
long.
have a breakdown between the court-ordered services and voluntary?
Yeah. That's a
Not in
Sierra
this,
question.
not in this slide, but we've.
If it's court ordered and it's still in the family-based safety service, stage from investigation over, then it'll count under the family-based safety service. So if you look at the removal, the substitute care, those are just cases from investigations that are up there. And I just want to go over some of the demographics that we saw in fiscal year 2025 for the children that we are interacting with and seeing. So as you can see for race and ethnicity, the largest population that we have is going to be Hispanic. And the next highest is going to be African American. And so I'm sorry, let me see. I cannot see this. Give me 1 minute. Sorry, it's going to be Hispanics are 42%, and then we have Anglo children at 26%, and we have African Americans at 24%, and then the 8% is other. You can see that between female and male children that we work with, they're pretty even, 49%, 51%. It tends to fluctuate either back and forth, but they're typically pretty even. You can see that the children that are coming into foster care, the most that we have are children that are very, very young, and followed by children that are 3 and 5. And if you look at the ages between 14 and 17, those are going to be our teenagers, our young adults. And you can see that they're 9% of our population, but they are the population that we heavily focus on. What we've seen as a new, the cases that we see now with older youth coming into foster care, they have a lot more mental health needs. They need a lot of services to help them and help the caregivers work with them in their own home. So even though that population is only 9%, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of resources, and we are committed to really finding solutions to help our youth be productive and to be able to return home. Yes.
Just curious, the numbers that you have in the first and the pie chart, do you have a comparison to children in the population of Texas? Do you have a comparison chart?
Just like that, but we're about to release a legislatively required report on disproportionality, and it includes these by the state of Texas, and then I think the 5 biggest counties in Texas, and it compares it to the population of children, and then compared to children removed. So that might be a good resource. Yeah, it's a legislative report. It should be coming out in I think it's due the next few days. So it'll be a post on our website.
Erica, Is the department still requiring regional director approval for the removal of all kids over 12?
I believe that, and I believe they are. I'd have to check with Marta Talbert, who is over investigations. But I know that we definitely, especially with older youth, there's a lot of staffings that already happen before we ask for removal. And it's not even just staffing internally, but it's also staffing externally with psych hospitals, with people in the community that have been working with them, with with HHSC, who have a lot of the mental health services. So typically we are doing everything we can to prevent a removal by the time we actually have to go to a removal. So I would say that really the staffings are not just internally, but they're externally. We've created a lot of different processes. So this is just an overview of our children in substitute care and where are they living. As you can see, as of this, is this month, Sierra?
End of August.
End of August, yes. We had 16,251 children in care, ages 0 through 17. And then at the end of August of 2025, we had a total of 13,381, which is about 82% that are actually residing in a family-like home setting. And we have been working diligently to really reduce the number of kids that have to be in RTCs, that have to be in a more restrictive setting because of their needs. And so our goal, like Audrey said, is to ensure that every child has an opportunity to be in a home-like setting. So as you can see, we have a lot of our population is really in a type of foster home and or with a kinship caregiver, which is what we want for our youth. We have work to continue to do, but definitely we have a lot of different initiatives currently in place to make sure that we are assessing that we are really providing the best foster home that we can. And I think T3C is going to be really, really good for that because we do have some tailored services that we are going to be paying for that could really help that foster home work with youth or children that have higher needs.
Is the licensed kinship fall under foster family homes?
It does. So if you look at the kinship population over here, you can see that we have 39.5 that are unverified. And you'll see that later on in the PowerPoint, you'll see that our kinship number is a little bit higher because we have both there. But here they would be under a CPA, so foster family home. Thank you.
Same question.
Oh, okay. Yes.
So I have a question. So
Yes.
my understanding over the years and what I would always see is that whenever a child is put in a residential treatment center, they typically have some serious psychological or psychiatric issues. And we know what those are, there's huge. And so if that number is going down and they're being placed in a more family type setting, what is being done to meet those needs that those children are facing?
Sure. So as I mentioned, T3C, I think is really gonna help with that because we have some specialized packages that we could really, it can be tailored to what the child needs. And sometimes they require a lot of additional support and services, and being able to offer the foster family more money to be able to meet those needs and to bring in those services is definitely going to be helping. We've also have been working very closely with the CPAs, with the SSCCs to really increase the capacity in our treatment foster homes, which is really, really important because that is a one-on-one ratio where we can really, where they can really work intensively with children that have these type of needs that you're talking about. And I think that the other big piece that we have really been working on is ensuring that we are connecting kinship caregivers to the LMHA services, that they know what those services are, a lot of education, but also a lot of holding hands, right? To work with the kinship caregiver, whether it's that they're doing outpatient, psychiatric treatment, whatever that may be. We have come, if we want kids to be in a family-like home setting, then we as an agency and the other community providers that provide services, we know that the most important thing that we can do for these caregivers is provide hands-on support. And that's what we really have been working on. What can we offer you? Who can be in the home? We sometimes, initially, we even have workers that are going in every day at the initiation of a placement with a kinship caregiver, just to make sure. Do you have any questions if there's flare-ups? Because we want to prevent children from having a placement disruption. So we've created different processes to support.
If we were trying to find the number of kids that were placed out of state, not with family, but in a residential facility, are we tracking that separately, or is that part of other foster care, or where could we find that data?
Yeah, we do track that. So we typically have, and we don't have it here, but we typically have about 400 and some amount of children that are placed out of state. The majority are placed with relatives. They're going to, they're going to be adopted. Typically, we have around 90 to maybe 110 kids that are in an RTC. And those are very specialized facilities that have programming that we just don't have in Texas. It's way more intensive. The programming that they offer is more intensive. So we try to prevent kids from going out of state. That is our priority. But sometimes what we find is the providers in state, they're just not able to meet the needs of some of our kids that have really, really high acuity. And we have to place them out. But it's about 87 to about 110 kids a month.
Are there large, what I'm looking for, differences among kids that are in community-based care, those that aren't in these kind of numbers? Do you see any kind of difference or variation in community-based care versus?
Yeah, well, we don't have the breakdown by, I don't have the breakdown here, but what I will say is that I believe that the SSCCs are just as invested as the legacy regions to have children in family-like settings. And I will say that the SSCCs have been able to actually to bring on some very specialized positions that make that happen. And I think that that's great because that's what families need. That's what providers need in order to be able to maintain. So I do believe that their goal is just like ours. I think the data will probably vary somewhat depending on what region you're in, right? Because in some very rural areas, you don't have the capacity for foster homes, right? So you have to go somewhere else. But I believe that their goal is always, as ours, is to have a child placed in a foster home or a kinship home.
Yes. I'm just looking at the numbers. I'm curious to know because it's an extreme reduction. And I'm wondering first of all, I think it's outstanding. But I'd like to know if you could attribute it to, what would you attribute that major reduction to?
Yeah, so I think that number one, alternative response has really, really had an impact in children coming into foster care. Because again, they're able to work hands-on with a family. And most importantly, the other investigations can concentrate on those other referrals that, we know are safety right now. We got to be out there trying to prevent that removal. It's allowed for that. We did have a change in our definition of neglect. And neglect is typically the highest percentage of removals that we see for CPS. And so that has also helped. But I also think that there's been a lot of education. There's been a lot of community resources who really have really, they're committed to providing services to families so that they don't have to be in our system. And I think that, you know, we always say CPS can't do this alone. It takes everybody. And I think that the reduction in kids coming into foster care is about everybody as a whole. It's not just what we're doing, but it's about what everybody is doing to reduce the numbers. And you're right, the decrease has been pretty significant. And, you know, but it's a good thing. We don't want kids in foster care. We want to find relatives. We want to work with parents outside of the legal system because we know how difficult it is to have your child in foster care.
That actually leads into my question. That being the goal, why does kinship care come in at 39.5%? and non-kinship foster placement come in at 41.6. There are more kids going outside of the family to foster care than there are inside. If that's a priority, why is that happening?
Right. So later on, I'm going to talk about kinship and I'm going to talk about some of the efforts that we have. And you'll see that the kinship care is really at about 43%. Our goal is to have half of our kids in kinship care, which we're working towards. So on the foster family home, you have kinship caregivers in that percentage, but you can't see it because they're verified. Therefore, they go under the CPA. So that's a combination of some kinship caregivers and some just foster homes. Does that make sense? Great.
Question, where do kids that are on, or families that are on PCSPs fall? Do they fall within?
No, because the PCSPs are in the investigation stage and or in the family-based stage. However, what you will find is that if we have to do a removal from investigations or FBSS and they were already in a PCSP, they are more likely to start off being in kinship from the onset.
Children that are very difficult to place, children who are going to be a danger to others around them, like children who set fires, children who we know what the issues are. What's happening with those children?
So we, you're right, those are children that, and I think I was talking about the older youth population and how we only have 9% and some of them have some of those characteristics that you're talking about. And so as an agency, we have been really, really focused on how do we get treatment to this child? How do we get the mental health services that they need? How do we leverage what HHSC already has in services so that we can provide that to the child and to the caregiver or even to the foster parent, right? So we have various things that we can do. We have different levels of staffing for kids that are very, very, they have these very high unique needs. And it can start with just a staffing internally. And then we have a daily staffing of some of these kids that we really cannot find a placement for because of some of that, and really thinking what provider can we work on one-on-one with that would be willing to treat this child, and or do they have to go out of state because that's the only option. We don't want kids in a hotel that have these type of needs. And then we have a third tier, which is we have staffing with our HHSC partners to staff very specific youth that have these type of unique challenges. And then if we can't find something for them at that level of staffing, then we have what we call level 4 staffing. And that one is we hold it every other week, and it is with all of HHSC executives, myself, and at the table, we have the LMHA, we have the community partners, we have different programming. We have, the various programs that HHSC works with, which is like for juvenile, right? The cell placements, the more restrictive settings that they might have, and really looking at how can we both work together to find the best treatment and the best placement for this child.
9% that talking about that older age bracket, isn't that most of what CWAP, most of those kids are that in that, all in that 9%, that older age bracket?
Well, it's a lot lower for CWAP, what we see. We typically do find programming placements. CWAP is about, we might have about 15 kids across the state any given night. So the population in CWAP is a lot smaller. However, they have a lot of these needs that you are talking about. And so while yes, some of them might end up in CWAP, maybe through, maybe through different changes that they're going through, or, they're breaking placement. And so that's why I say like that is the hardest population sometimes to work with and to make them healthy and to make them better, because it's just, they're in a really difficult place. And it's not that they don't care. It's not that they don't want help. Think about my teenagers and I'm like, it's hard to get them to what needs to happen. So, when we're working with our young adults, they want just what regular teenagers have and they act just the way but it's amplified by the trauma, by the mental health needs.
I know y'all have done a lot of work in the last few years on CWAP and finding children more placements and things like that. So
Our staff have been amazing. Okay, time and care. So as you can see, time and care, the average time and care for children exiting the system has pretty much remained consistent over the past 3 fiscal years. You can see that it declined just a little bit for fiscal year 2024 and then 2025. We were pretty similar to the year before. So this is something that we definitely, we want to exit kids as soon as possible, because we know that the longer they linger in foster care, the harder it's going to be to return a child back home. We know that those chances of reunifications decrease and decrease. And so when we talked about earlier, and Jamie was talking about really focusing on, some very tailored family plans of service, when we remove, I think is going to be a huge key to reducing this time in care. Because if we can really work on the top 2 things that this parent really needs in order for the child to return home, I mean, the child might return home and we continue to work through them, right? Through family reunification or FBSS intensive in-home services. But the longer they stay in care, that reunification, that positive permanency continues to decline. So I'm super excited about the work that we are going to be doing and that we already started brainstorming on, because we really think that it's going to impact in care. And here are the statewide exits that will show that exits have decreased over the past 5 years. And that really is being driven by the number of kids and the removals in comparison to the removals in 2021. You can see that in fiscal year 2025, we had 9,972 children come into foster care and 9,800 kids exited foster care. So that is a 38% decrease in entries from fiscal year 2021 and a 43% decrease from fiscal year 2021. But as the numbers lower, the percentages increase because they weigh more, if that makes sense, right? The least that you have. We have a lot of different efforts happening for making sure that we are, we want to send children home. We want them to be with family. And so we have some efforts happening around the reunification piece, because we really, it's great if we have kinship. It's great if they can get adopted, but really, we really need to work intensively with the parents who lost their child to get the child back into the home. So reunification is one of our top priorities, reunifying back with the actual parent that we removed from, if possible, and if it can be safe.
So as removals have gone down, what has happened to the percentage of cases where there has been a removal and a petition to terminate has been filed? Has that remained stable? simply, I mean, with regard to the percentage of the numbers that have been removed. It seems logical that it would remain consistent because because it's been more difficult because the legal standard has increased as far as removing the child. And then what's happened with, do you know that number?
Yes, we're gonna talk about it. It's like 2 slides down,
Okay,
like
sorry.
That's okay. But we'll display all the numbers. So here is our permanency goals and kind of how we did for fiscal year 2025. Again, might change just a little bit when the final numbers get published. But as you can see, our permanency goals for kids in conservatorship, the most important for us is reunification back to the actual parent, because that's what is counted under reunification. Unification doesn't count if they went to the parent that was not involved. It doesn't count kinship placements. That is literally returning back to a parent. So as you can see, 44%, which is really good, and it is an improvement, but we can do a lot better than that. Non-relative adoptions, 22%, and relative adoptions are 21%. And there was a time where we had a higher percentage of relative adoptions, and it's dipped just a little bit. We are very aware of that. And again, we have a lot of kinship efforts that we are working on, and we hope to see that increase, because as a department, we would rather kids have a forever home with their family. Of course, we appreciate those that step up and want to provide a forever family, but kinship is always the preference.
Erica.
Yes.
So for the reunification, you said it doesn't include the parent that was not involved? Is that what I?
It doesn't include the non-offending parents.
It doesn't, okay.
Yeah. Is that correct, Sierra?
Performance goal, I'm not positive about.
No.
performance goal.
Oh,
Is this,
I'm sorry.
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
As a matter of fact, what if both parents are offending parents? And it goes to
So
just.
they would count under reunification. I might have to get some clarification. I probably created a lot of confusion. So I will get some clarification on that number and how we collect the data, but I thought my recollection was that it really is about reunifying back with the actual parent, the offending parent. Because, sometimes we have parents that are out of state, right? And then we go and find them and we're like, hey, you have baby Johnny here that they didn't know about baby Johnny. And that parent is fine. They can care for the child, and we need to just send the baby back home with them, right? But really the offending parent, the one that we were trying to reunify with, and that was part of the permanency plan, was the actual offending parent. So, but we'll seek some clarification on that.
Erica, are these? I'm a little confused about the language, because are we talking about exits? Because if it is just the goal of the, right, to me, I'm a little confused about what are we looking at? Because it seems like in TMC cases, the permanency goal of reunification would be substantially higher, right? So are these actually the exits? 44% were reunified, 22%?
I think that's the next slide is the exits. This is the goal for those children in conservatorship. Right.
Okay, so it must include then PMC children, because that explains why it's only 44%. So I feel like that's kind of a little bit misleading, because obviously the goal, if the rights are terminated of the parent, would no longer be reunification.
Right.
So I think having those, so I just wanted to clarify, 44%, it's got to be, close to 100 if we're talking about kids in temporary managing.
Right, because that's always
So,
goal.
so this includes kids in PMC, and we don't know what percentage of kids in PMC versus TMC for the goals here.
Yes, because TMC, that is always our first goal.
Right, okay.
Majority of the time. Thank you.
Yeah.
So here is our This is the percentage of the exits from DFPS. So you can see that about 1/3 of our kids are reunified. This will show you kind of where we started in fiscal year 21 and kind of how we're trending for fiscal year 2025. So for returned home, we had 33%. You can see that has kind of stayed at the same level. We had a dip in 2023, but we are seeing an increase little by little. Our focus is to increase it more and more. And then relative effective kin custody with permanency care assistant. This is always one of our priorities because we know that when we're able to exit and our caregivers are able to have PCA, the recidivism back into the system is almost nothing. So that is really one of our goals. We have a lot of different processes of educating caregivers and explaining to them the benefits of PCA and what that can mean for them and for our kids. And I really think, and I'm really, really hoping that the new standards that are coming out is really going to help with this. Because if we know just by the smaller percentages that we currently are able to get to go through PCA, if we know that this helps children from coming back into the system, that's where we want to be if the kids cannot return back to the parents. So really hoping that the new kinship standards are going to really help us with that. And we're going to do a lot of, I'm going to talk a little bit about Rider 40, where we are launching a big campaign for kinship caregivers. And it's not going to be just about becoming a kinship giver, but it's also going to be for caregivers that are currently kinship caregivers, where they can find resources, who they can go, what's available to them. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that because we really want to see kids be successful with relatives. You can see the relative adoptions. I just spoke about them. As you can see, there was about a 2-point reduction from fiscal year 2023. And again, I really think that, we're grateful. And we're going to do everything we can to see an increase. You can see emancipation, and that is, it increased in 2023 and went down just by a point, but it's been pretty steady for emancipation. And I think earlier somebody mentioned, like, what services are we providing for youth? What are we doing? So we have various things that we are working on. So we know that this population, whether it's increased by 1% or 2%, that is something that we don't want you to just emancipate out. So we have we've increased our cell capacity, which is our supervised independent living programs, where a youth is able to reside on their own. And is able to, there's like a stipend that they get. There's like, they get money for other expenditures. So it's really a way to transition them into, being an adult. So we have been able to really increase that capacity. So we're excited that we'll be able to have more of those placements for them. We have really, really been working with providers to increase that capacity because it is needed. We also have a specialist up in state office that is dedicated to housing for youth that are going to be aging out. And we work on creating a plan A, plan B, and plan C for what happens if you do have to age out of foster care. What are some options for housing, services? And then, of course, we have all of our educational benefits that we're able to give to our youth that are aging out, and really trying to work with them ahead of time to consider going into a higher education. Bexar County has a fabulous program where they actually have a court that works with our young adults to actually get them to go to college, and they've seen a really good success with that. We have, and it really has made a difference.
Harris County.
Oh, Harris County too. Okay.
So it's Pearls and Eagles.
Okay, awesome.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, so programs like that, I think really it's a lot of mentoring, a lot of hand holding, and that's okay because that's what we're supposed to do. That's our job at CPS is if our kids don't have others to help and guide them. I can tell you that our PAL staff and our CVS caseworkers are amazing with older youth that are aging out. They treat them as if they were their child, and they're like, you know, we're gonna get you here, we're gonna get you here. And we even have a youth that aged out almost a year ago. And I can tell you that when I look at what they're doing, it's almost like the youth is still in care, and they just do it because they care. And so when I tell you that they are our priority and we want to see them be successful, we are really looking at ways of how do we set them up for success. But again, we would really like that number to be even lower than where it's at, because we want them to have that support.
Eric, I want to talk about a really small subset, but not insignificant population, and that's those children who are aging out and going into guardianships. I've had a couple of those in my court recently, and I'm really glad that Judge Brown's here from Harris County, and I'm super excited that Representative Hall is here. And this is an aside. Thank you so much for being here. I think everyone in the room is excited to have you and hear you. So thank you. What happens is if a child is in care from one county, but placed in another county for aging out, the guardianship jurisdiction is in that county. And I think that negatively affects Harris County. I've had several of these cases recently. All these kids are from Little League, McCullough County, placed in Harris County. One of the girls, actually, his last name's Brown, and she's been in our court for over 10 years. And so, excuse me, we had to do the guardianship in Harris County, which means it's costing Harris County money to pay the ad litems, and I think insignificantly because we have so many kids placed in RTCs in Harris County. I think it would be a great idea if we maybe had a legislative change to let a child who is in care of CPS, DFPS have their guardianship in their home county and not their county of residence. It's a really small tweak, but I think it would be really beneficial. Probably CASA would support that because they would be able to carry those advocates, their attorney ad litems on forward. Just an idea for a legislative change.
Thank you. And that is something that that can also make it even difficult for our kids that we're currently looking for, homes. You know, they meet the waiver requirement. However, they can't get in because some of our kids that have those type of needs, they tend to move, right? We're not able to find those placements that are 6 months or 8 months. Some work out great, but we do have our population moves from county to county. So when they move, it has to start all over. And they're like, well, now it belongs in this county and we have to transfer everything. And part of our level 4 staffings that I just mentioned earlier, we have them on the call with us. And so they do make efforts to coordinate that so that we can do it as fast as possible. But there is some challenges with that. All right, kinship care. We've talked a lot about it, and we're gonna just very quickly look at some of our outcomes and things that we are doing around trying to improve our kinship care. So we've had a lot of work being done in investigations prior to when the kids are removed, is really looking at what can we do to find a relative right now. We have to remove this child, we will stay out there 8, 9, And we've stayed out there for 12 hours trying to see, do we have a relative that can step up and care safely for this child until we determine what's going to happen. So as you can see, there's been a percentage of increase. However, I will say that as investigation has moved forward with that initiative, I do anticipate that we are going to be even higher than that percentage. There's a lot of intentionality at the onset, a lot of focus on diligent searches and how we follow up on those, and working with a lot of urgency around that during the removal phase. And then, of course, if they're not in a relative placement as they move on to conservatorship, we never stop looking for kinship caregivers. And I can tell you that even for our older youth, we go back and we search like what relative was ever involved in the last 10, 15 years that maybe we can still approach and they can still consider. And sometimes that's a success. We're able to send kids back into a kinship caregiver that maybe they hadn't seen in X amount of years. But now with social media and everything, our kids are savvy and they can give us a lot of information about, who's important to them, who can we approach. And so our goal, as you can see, there was a dip in the number of kinship placements that we were making. And so we had a goal of reaching 45% by August. And so you can see that for fiscal year, as of the last day, we were at 45%. And our next goal is to be at 50% in the next 6 months. That's going to be our goal. So we have various initiatives that are going on. And so the next slide will kind of show you who's changing it? Okay, so here's a slide that kind of has data on kinship placements over time, as I mentioned. So you can see that we were at our highest in fiscal year 2021. And so currently we are at 43.2%. And I will tell you that when I look at the data of individual regions and where they're at with their kinship placements, we have Region 7 is our highest, which is, I want to say they're like 50, they're a little bit over 50, I believe. Region 11, which is the Valley and Corpus, they've seen a great percentage of increase in kinship placements. The SSCCs have increased, and some of the SSCCs have a lot of intensive efforts, and we've seen an increase in their kinship placements. So this is really a statewide effort, and again, top priority.
That's a good question.
Yes.
What was the reason for the decline? I noticed from 2021 to 24, there was a decline and then you bumped it back up. And I'm wondering if whatever the reasons were for the decline, if you were able to capture that information and use it to increase.
I don't know that we captured the information on why the decline. I can tell you kind of what we were seeing was happening. So of course, COVID played a huge impact in that. We saw a lot of kids from COVID, come out with even more trauma, more mental health issues. And a lot of our kinship caregivers, we saw a switch in the population in terms of needs. These are older youth with very, very high needs. And I think that kinship caregivers were giving it an opportunity, but they were tired and they were like, we can't get them to go to school. We can't, they're disrupting the other younger kids. And so I think there was a shift in the population and we needed to do a better job of identifying those resources and coming to the table. And again, really focusing on what will it take for this caregiver to feel confident taking in a child with these type of needs. What can we bring to the table to help them? How do we wrap around with them? Now we do like kinship disruption staffing. So if the kinship caregiver feels like I'm like right there, or even before they get there, we want them to tell us, and then we'll have a disruption staffing with them to see how can we support you? What can we do? And I think that that shift in culture and that shift in urgency and real focus on how do we support the caregiver has been probably one of the most important shifts that we have made. And I do think that that's why this is increasing. And as we look at increasing more and more, that really will continue to be the focus, making sure we have that for them at the forefront.
Will the commission have access to these slides?
Yes, they are going to be.
They had two more drivers, I think, might be at play. I think also you have in 2020, 2021, we had the decrease of removals. So I think some of the kids that would have been in kinship previously may have not been removed. That's like one driver. And we also had a big reduction in our paid foster care capacity because that was the beginning of heightened monitoring. A lot of our operations closed, and I think we shifted some of our population to kinship. So that I think those are at play in those earlier years as well.
Question about the goal for kinship placement. If it's one of the top priorities, why is the goal only 50%?
I will tell you that when we started working more intensively around this effort, when my team came to me and said, like, we're gonna try to get a 45%, I was like, what? Excuse me? Like, we need to be like at 50, 60. Why are we shooting for 45? We started at the end of like mid-year, and it's taken us about 6 months to go to 45%. And I will tell you that it's difficult because a lot of our caregivers, again, either don't have the right support or they've been working with them. And so getting caregivers to want to take children in can be difficult because it alters their entire life. And again, it's going to take time for them to really be able to commit. And I see it I hear about caregivers who are on the fence and they're like, we love them, we want them here, but we can't, like, we cannot any longer. So I wish it was as easy as just, finding caregivers and placing kids there, but it's not. We find caregivers and it takes us time to work with them to really move them forward with the placement of a child, unless, little ones are probably going to be the easiest sometimes, but it's our older youth population that we, anywhere from 11 up, it can be really difficult for our caregivers, but we are working diligently on this. Yes.
Going back to one of the questions from Judge Ferguson earlier, does this slide take into account kinship that is licensed foster care?
Yeah, this one does. Yes, it takes both verified and unverified. Yes.
Your verified kinship caregivers also aren't receiving as many subsidies and supports as a foster family, or certainly as a treatment foster family.
So when our kinship caregivers get verified, they do get a lot of probably more support because they're with an agency who's there to make them successful, right? They're able to bring them to services, they're able to provide additional training, things of that nature, that when you're unverified, it's not as simple, right? Because you're still working with caregivers who are like, I don't got time to go to training on how to deal with, I'm trying to survive, right? So like, I think that when there's a lot of benefits to kinship caregivers being verified. I mean, if you look at TFF, the support that kinship caregivers get if they're in TFF, oh my God, they're just amazing.
No, absolutely. I'm just meaning they don't receive as much financially as a verified foster home, and certainly not as much as.
Yes, financially, oh yeah.
So
absolutely.
that plays into it as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Erica, I know I heard you mention the areas of the state that are doing really well with kinship, and it stood out to me that those are the 4 remaining legacy areas right? And so as we move to being totally statewide with community-based care, and one of the things that I think everyone is really thinking about is like, how do we ensure that the good work that's happening, the legacy system doesn't go away? And how do we, the SSCCs, I think, come along on a lot of initiatives, right? But they also have their own goals and they're all independent. And so that's one of the things that, I'm just thinking about a lot. And how do we make sure that Region 7 keeps that very high level of kinship caregivers as we move to community-based care? And, and I do think we saw in a lot of the areas when we moved to stage 2, I think we did see a big dip in the percentage of kids placed with kin. And I know that SSDCs have done a lot of work to be intentional about increasing that. But I also wonder if that's kind of some of the statewide driver in those dips. And so I don't know if you can speak to that, but that's certainly something that, we have on our minds a lot.
Yeah, what I will say is that as community-based has moved forward, we've learned a lot region by region, right? And I am confident that as we have rolled it out and kinship care is a priority, whether you're in legacy or if you're with the SSCCs, right? And when we look at our data, I have to look at the whole state, regardless if they're in the SSCC, right? So when I look at that data, it's going to take all of us to achieve this bigger goal. And so as we transition, our goal right now, we have really shifted our mind to, we want to transfer a healthy system so that as it transfers over to the SSCCs, if kids are already in kinship, right, that continues to be what it is. And I know that that is their priority, is to have kids in kinship. And so I think as partners, it is both of our responsibilities as cases get transferred over to the SSCC to ensure that when kids can be with relatives, that they are with relatives. And I will tell you that for the SSCCs, I mentioned this earlier, but they have specialized positions that DFPS doesn't have that solely focus on kinship caregivers, supporting them, finding them. And when I hear them talk about these different initiatives that they have, we're like, we want to do that too, because we see the increase in kinship placement. So I think it's a good partnership. And I think that we both have the same goal in mind, and we take ideas from the SSCCs and they might take an idea from us, but hey, what's working? Let's figure out, and how do we use that to achieve better outcomes for kids?
Erica, is it a performance measure for the SSCCs?
Kinship care is, I think, yes,
Yeah,
it is.
Kinship at 60 days is a
Right.
performance measure. We also, part of the financial model, the stage 3 financial model for the SSCCs takes into consideration moving kids from paid placements to these kinship placements. So they are also financially incentivized to try to move to kinship.
So I want to thank you first of all. This has been wonderful. We are running out of time.
Yes, I was just going to ask Jamie.
And so if you have something, I know you have a few more slides. So if there's something you particularly want us to hear about, could you maybe do that? Just because,
Sure.
people need to get back.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I know that the slides are going to be put up. So if y'all review the slides and have any questions, my contact information is at the end of the PowerPoint. Please do not hesitate to reach out if you see something in there that you are still curious about or want to know about. We are here to serve you and to help you. So in there, the only thing I do want to mention is that last session, there was a lot of top priorities for the legislature, and I just want to commend the legislature for all the various bills that were passed that really are there to enhance better outcomes for children and family, and all the financial support and the better EIs that were awarded. And so we are extremely grateful for all the support that the legislature and that Madam Chair has given us throughout the session. I know that it will make a difference with the children and families that we are serving. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, email me. I'll be here. And thank you for what you all do. Again, we can't do this important work without any of you. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Very informative. informative, very helpful, and thank you for really presenting a very well-rounded break. Thank you. Okay, so we don't want to stand between us and food. So we've got lunch, and then let's try to get back promptly at 12:45 because we want to hear from the wonderful Megan LaVoy. If you walk into
Ready when you are.
Okay. Yeah, so it is my pleasure to, we have, you know, that. And she's done a wonderful, wonderful job. I've had the opportunity of working with Megan for how many years now? By a long time. And so without any further ado, the wonderful Megan Lovell.
For that introduction. Yes, thank you so much for having me. I always love coming to the Children's Commission and giving a brief OCA update. I know you had Jeffrey Timakawa and Marcus here this morning, so I'm glad that I'm able to join you all this afternoon. So I was going to start with, I don't have any slides, but just I always start with a little data update on how we're doing. I'll start with at the district level. So clearance rates for family cases in district courts have increased by 6 percentage points for fiscal year 25 over fiscal year 24. So our district family clearance rate is at 108%, which is great, which means they are clearing more cases than are coming right over. At the county level, it's a little less, it's 105%, which still really great. To have anything over 100% is outstanding. Also, we're seeing our percentage of family active pending cases significantly decreasing, which means that our courts are clearing their cases faster. So from fiscal year 24 to fiscal year 25, our family active pending cases decreased by 20%. So that means they have 20% less family cases on the docket. And by over 30% in our county courts. So our courts are clearing these family cases very well. Also, our new CPS cases have stabilized over the last 4 years, following a pretty sharp decline that we saw in fiscal year 22 to some legislation. In fiscal year 25, we had 7,284 new CPS cases filed in our district courts, and our courts disposed of 7,129 of those cases. I know that y'all, the judges in this room, especially the district judges, have heard a lot about performance measure reports. Those were reports that the legislature passed 2 sessions ago in House Bill 2384. We look at 3 elements: clearance rates, the age of the active pending caseload, and the age of the cases disposed. It's a yearly report. Our first report was due last year, and it was only a 6-month timeframe. This next report will be for the full fiscal year 25, and it's due November 1st. The clearance rate benchmark for our district and county courts is a 90% clearance rate. I fully expect the clearance rates to improve. We'll have a full year of data to look at. But even with just the 6-month snapshot, 80% of our district courts had a clearance rate over 90%, which is really great for a state of our size. Turning to our data that are from our CPCMS system, which is our Child Protection Associate judges. And we're seeing data from our child protection judges as well. In fiscal year 25, there was over 31,000 hearings conducted and over 5,250 final orders rendered. We're also seeing a rise in the percentage of non-conservatorship cases being filed, while the percentage of conservatorship cases is falling. So the breakdown for fiscal year 25, conservatorship was about 52.8% of the cases, non-conservatorship was 35%. And in comparison, in fiscal year 22, conservatorship cases made up 65% of the docket, and non-conservatorship cases made up 18%. Seeing right numbers there as well. We are transitioning, or will be transitioning, to a new case management system. for CPCMS, our legislature funded a new case management system for our specialty courts. So not only will our child protection and child support courts get this benefit of this new case management system, but also all of the specialty courts across the state. So DWI courts, our mental health treatment courts, our veterans courts, our drug courts. So we will be going out for procurement this year or early next year for that system. So we're really excited about upgrading that technology. In conjunction with that, I know a lot of y'all know Daryl Childress. He has been our longtime programmer for CPCMS, and he is retiring at the end of this month and has been with OCA for many, many years and has worked on CPCMS. And so I just wanted to publicly thank him. I know so many of you have worked with him, and he has done great work on that system. Also wrapping up was our early intervention court liaison grant project. So we had Rachel Thacker in Bell County, Barbara Bischoff in Galveston County, and Margaret Watson in Lubbock County. And all three of those staff did great work working on this project with those courts in those areas. And I know that the judges were very happy with their work. And so just wanted to publicly, and they left a few left at the end of July, and our final court liaison left in August. So wanted to publicly thank them as well. Turning to security, we have seen a 97% increase in security incidents in our state, in our courts, from fiscal year 25 over fiscal year 24. The legislature did pass several court security bills this past session, and I want to draw attention to a specific one. It was House Bill 5081 by Representative Leach and Senator Creighton. This bill dealt specifically with data brokers and provided civil and criminal penalties for data brokers that are putting judges' information online if they don't remove it in a specific time period. But it also allows OCA to procure a system that would be free for judges to use. We don't have a name for the system yet. We have to go out to for procurement for it. But it's a system that will remove judges' personal information from the internet. I know that y'all are probably very well aware of. There's many systems that do this. A very popular one is Delete Me. There's ads if you listen to the radio for Delete Me. And so OCA is going to be procuring the system and offering it free to judges and at a discounted price to the judge's family members. So
And that's also finding the information out there for us, which is correct.
And there's various levels of these systems. Some are as detailed as they can find Little League roster that you might have been, a judge might have been the coach, or the judge's wife might have been the coach of this Little League team, and it has your address and telephone number on there, and very detailed, and can find this information and remove it from the internet. So we are really excited about this. We're hoping the timeline for procurement depends on, the cost of the system, and if we get something off the shelf, but we're hoping to have something in place by early next year for judges to utilize. I've talked to y'all a lot about our court reminder program. This is also a legislative and judicial council initiative. I know all of y'all get the text messages going to the dentist for your dog's grooming appointment, and very annoying, but you show up to those appointments. And so this system is provided free of charge to counties to use to remind litigants to show up for court. We have 13 counties that are on this system already, and we have 80 counties that are waiting to get on the system. There's different data requirements and integration requirements with their case management system that we work through with them. It's provided free of charge. The state pays for this system. So I always like to bring it up here at the various meetings so that you can go back to your counties, and for counties not taking advantage of it, they should. Just in the past year, because it went live in the fall of last year, we've sent over 3.8 million text messages and 430,000 emails, and to get people to show up for their court dates. I've also talked a lot about Court Analytics Texas. This is our new case level data system. We are moving to collecting case level data over aggregate data. When I say aggregate data, right now, all of our data gets reported to us in buckets. So there is an other civil category bucket, and about 30% of our civil cases end up in that bucket. And so it's not very helpful in a lot of instances. When we move to collecting case level data, we'll have very specific information to start, follow a case from start to finish. We are starting with criminal data, and we already have some criminal data flowing in. We started with our counties that are on the Uniform Case Management System, which is primarily counties under 20,000. So we could test and fine tune what needs to be in the case management system. So we're currently working on that, but we're hoping to have accurate criminal data next year from this case level data system. So we're really excited about that project. And once we finish up with criminal, then we'll start moving to the other case categories, with civil being the next case category that we're looking at. And then we're doing district and county, and then we'll move to JP and municipal courts. And then lastly, I just wanted to put in a plug for our remote interpreter program. I talked about that here before. They are so busy. So I know lots of courts across the state are using them. Interpreters, very hard to find. These days we have interpreters that speak Spanish, German, Portuguese, and French. And the legislature provided us funding for 3 additional interpreters. So we're in the process of hiring those. And that is also free of charge for courts to use for non-evidentiary hearings when they can't find one in their county. So thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Again, we really appreciate it. Okay, and so now let me hear from Christopher Left. Oh, there you are. And she's going to talk about legal representation data. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justice. Hi, everyone. I'm Crystal Left-Pignon. I am the Director of Family Protection Representation at the Texas Indigent Defense Commission. And first, I do want to thank y'all for approving the grant so we can do a little more work at Title IV-E. We're really excited, and hopefully we will start recouping some of those funds and building out some programs. So thank you for that support. We really appreciate it. I know some of y'all know about TIDC. Some of you may not be all that familiar. But the Texas Indigent Defense Commission has historically been an organization that has focused on improving indigent defense in adult criminal and juvenile delinquency cases. But just over 4 years ago, TIDC started getting involved in what we call family protection representation, but that's essentially legal representation of children and parents in CPS cases. We try to come up with a shorter name, so we didn't have to say that over and over again. So when you hear family protection representation, that's what I'm talking about. We started about 4 years ago collecting data, and then a little over 2 years ago, the legislature added official responsibilities to TIDC to start working to improve that legal representation. So we're still fairly new in this space, but we're very excited about it. And we thank the commission and Jamie for giving us a little bit of time to talk about some of our work here. I'll be focusing on data and some connections with what y'all are doing. Data. And we're learning a lot about things that are going on in our state. And I think some of that, this will just be a little bit of preaching to the choir, because you'll say, yeah, we know, but now we have some clear evidence of what's going on out there. And if I can make this work correctly. There we go. Oh, I want you. There you go. Okay. I think it works. All right, so today we're going to talk a little bit about the data that we do collect. I'll explain the pieces of data we collect, what it means, when they're due, that sort of thing. I'm at the right thing.
Just Jessica.
Okay, point at Jessica, got it. Okay, we'll talk about the Indigent Defense Expenditure Report and trends that we're seeing there. That's one of our reports. Jessica, there we go. we will talk about the Family Protection Representation Judicial Plan. That is another piece of data. And then we will also talk about something that we collect called the Attorney Practice Time Report. All right, so let me get into what we collect and just a little bit about the history. So we first started collecting data in a statewide format back in November of 2021, and we did that on behalf of the Texas Judicial Council because the initial piece of legislation that came out, I think it was the 86th legislature, Megan, said that the data had to go to the council, the Judicial Council. And the Judicial Council doesn't have this like huge army of staff, and TIDC was already collecting data in the criminal space. So TIDC ended up adding on, collecting some data in family protection representation. And then in 2023, it was SB 2120, that was in the 88th session. We absorbed official responsibilities for a family protection representation, data collection being one of them. It's not the only thing we have to do, but it is a big piece of it. And so now the data just comes directly to us. We're not kind of collecting on behalf of the council any longer. But we do talk to the council a lot about what's going on, share that information. So the three main reports that we collect for family protection representation, the first one is the Indigent Defense Expenditure Report. This is the money report. This is due every year on November 1st, and county auditors or treasurers, so the county financial officer is the person who's responsible for submitting that report. For some counties, this is a fairly simple report if they're a smaller county and don't have spend a lot of money. For some counties like Harris, this can be quite intensive. It just kind of depends on the size of the county, but we get that every single year, and we have been getting that every year since November of 2021. This will be due again. We're getting pretty close. This will be due again on November 1st of 2025. And this report is, I mean, you learn a lot about how money's being spent. You know, it tells you a lot about where the needs are, usually different values, or, you know, what can counties spend, that sort of thing. It's really helpful, and we've learned a lot from that report. I'll talk a little bit about it more in a the next piece of data we collect is the Family Protection Representation Judicial Plan. This is due every other year in odd number years. So we collected in 21, 23, and we're going to collect again this year on November 1. This plan has gone through sort of an evolution. So some of y'all here, I do think, have been working on the plan. I've seen some of your names as submitters. Back in 2021, we submitted the plans through our work. We call it our legacy data collection website. TIDC has been collecting data in the criminal space for well over a decade. So that website we were using, it's a tad dated, and we're working on improving that website. We're eventually going to completely leave it and move to something new. But in 21, we collected our plans on the old site. In 23, the CPS plans were actually the first phase of the new data at TIDC. And, you know, when they were kicking around, well, who's going to go first? Who's going to have to do this first? I said, well, you can do CPS because we're a tough bunch and we can handle change. And so it went fine, I think. In 2025, it's changed some. I'm not going to give a whole training on how it's working. I'll talk a little bit about it, but it's going to be on a new website, which I will also share. Just to give you some background on the plan, this is kind of the nitty gritty of what's happening on the ground in the courts. It's how many lawyers do you have on your list? How many hours of CLE does a lawyer need to get on your list? When are you appointing lawyers in a TMC case? Those kinds of questions. So what's happening practically? The IDER is the money. The plan is what's required of your lawyers and what's happening on the ground with your lawyers. So this is also an incredibly important piece of information in painting a full picture of what's going on. And then we also collect something called an attorney practice time report. This is one of our newer reports. This report was not required back in 2021 or 2022. This was part of that SB 2120 that required that attorneys who take appointments in child protection cases report their percentage of practice time. So attorneys who take appointments for criminal or juvenile cases have long had to report their practice time. And it's just a percentage, like how much a percentage of your practice do you take in these cases? So we added on family protection representation 2 years ago. We collected that in 2023, 2024, and then this year it'll be due again. It is due on October 15th. So encourage your lawyers to please fill it out. I will also give you a little more information about that in a minute. But that is also a super helpful piece of information. It gives us a clear picture of, we talk a lot about whole numbers and lawyers are leaving the list or lawyers are coming on the list, but what are the lawyers doing, right? They're not necessarily dedicating their full practice to CPS. And so this gives us a little bit more. That is also due every single year. Okay. Okay, there we go. Okay, so let's get into the details a little bit of the IDER. I could spend hours with y'all talking about all this, but I'm going to try to cover the highlights. So we've been collecting financial information for 4 years now from the counties. We'll get more soon in November, so we'll learn a little bit more later this fall. But this chart here shows you just the general trend of total county spending. So this is just the whole number. When we add up every single county and every dollar they've told us they've spent on legal representation for families in CPS cases, this is what they report to us. And you can see here, it generally falls between the low 60 million to just over 66 million range. Our first year of reporting back in FY21, that was the highest number we've ever seen reported, and then it's dropped some in subsequent years, but it seems like it's sort of plateauing a bit. And it does seem to match the DFPS numbers as well as far as like numbers of kids coming into care and that sort of thing. So this is helpful to know the total spending. I will say for a state of our size, when we compare to say like Colorado, which is significantly smaller, they do have a much more robust legal representation system. They actually spend a little more than we do every year on legal representation. So although this might sound like a lot of money, we are a very big state, as you all know, 254 counties, lots of kids to take care of. So we may not quite be hitting our target for what we should be spending. There's probably a lot of reasons for that, but that's just to give you some context for where we're at with what we're spending. Okay, so I think this is really, really interesting. I've become quite the data nerd. But so we had our totals and that's helpful, right? Like how much is being spent total, and that's somewhat informative. But when you really look at it, this is, I think, really, really insightful. So our top 11 counties, they spend $1 million or more per year on family protection representation. They're the usual suspects, right? Our Harris counties, Dallas, Bay are the big counties, Travis, with a lot of kids and a lot of families. But their share of what is spent is 60%. So when we look at fiscal year 24, the last year that we have data for, and we just kind of start slicing it up, 10% of that total number is being spent in only 11 counties. They're the big ones, so it's not like totally stressful, but that's still quite a large share, right? So then we go to the middle 58 counties. And so what I did was I just looked at, okay, anyone spending under $1 million, so 999,000 to 100,000, like 100,001 cent or something, just right over 100,000. That's 31% of the total. And that's only 58 counties that's in that range. So we've got a huge share, 91% of our counties where that money's being spent. It's not that many, right? It's 69 counties when we add it up. So then when we look at the bottom 160 counties, those are counties spending $100,000 or less. They are only 9% of the share of spending. That's over half of our counties in Texas. I will also add that 25 counties didn't report any spending, so they're not included in the pie. There's some counties where there's like literally no CPS action because there's nobody lives there, or they don't have kids, or whatever's going on. There is one county who shall remain nameless who should have reported expenditures but did not. But there are 24 that I think legitimately did not spend any money, and that makes sense. So they're not included in the pie. So the 9% is a bit concerning and should get us thinking a little bit more. Now, there are definitely some counties that are extremely small, right? Where maybe they have two CPS KT. Okay, fine. If you're spending that little, that makes sense. But 160 counties is more than half of our counties. And they're definitely not all running, 8 cases a year or something like that. So what's happening there, right? Some counties maybe don't have the money. There are counties that are struggling. This can be a difficult thing to pay for. So we're going to keep looking at this. TIDC did ask last session at the legislature for some state support to start infusing some state funds. This is all county funded at this, as you all know. Unfortunately, we did not get the request, but we will ask again next session. And we're going to keep analyzing all of this, to give everyone a good picture about what's going on. But
have you looked at various counties to determine how much these attorneys that are appointed by courts are making on average, say per? I know in my county, I was from one of the largest counties in the state, Tarrant County. But I mean, the amount of money that was being paid per hour for the lawyers that are doing this important work was dismal. It was just horrible. And so, it was a real disincentive. Now, a lot of them do it because that's where their passion is, but it's very difficult for them to continue doing it because there's just no money in it. So have you looked at that? And I mean, I think to find some alternative sources to be able to pay these lawyers is critically important.
right, that's a very good point. I have a slide a little later that will get into it somewhat on the surface, but yes, we have looked at it. The plan that we have judges report every other year, part of that reporting is sending us the fee schedule. So we got fee schedules in 2021, 2023. Not every county has a fee schedule on point. It's a little complicated, but of the fee schedules that we did receive, we have certainly looked at what's being paid, and the pay is it is not consistent. For just to be very clear, we have some counties paying flat rates, capped rates. They're not even doing hourly rates necessarily, which can be somewhat problematic in cases like this, where if you're going to do the job well, it's a lot of work, right? Some counties do have an hourly rate. I'll talk about it in a little bit, but that also is pretty inconsistent with what the pay is. And yes, some counties do pay a very low rate. And considering how important this work is and how much work it can be, it can be quite the deterrent for an attorney to take on the work. Particularly the younger lawyers who are coming out of law school with exorbitant amounts of debt. It may just be really cost prohibitive, but that's a really good point. And we have looked at it. We will continue to look at it. We will get more fee schedules in 25 and we will do a deep dive and do some evaluation of that.
Are you seeing, I know it, at least for a long time in practice, there were attorneys that work in other fields that would take these cases pro bono. I don't know if that's still like a common practice, but I'm wondering if we capture that at all or in any way. Like how frequently are counties using a tax attorney or something that, like for an occasional child welfare case for their pro bono? I don't know.
Well, we may catch it a little bit in the attorney practice time report, which I'll talk about in a little bit. The money piece, so this pie chart here, this is just money being spent, right? These are the dollars. So this isn't going to include pro bono cases. I'm sure some counties might, and I know that practically that does happen. The judge is in a pickle and they just have to grab somebody and they need someone with the law license. That's not captured here in our expenditure reporting. It could potentially come up a little bit in our attorney practice time report. We don't specifically ask, though, if you take it pro bono. We just ask if you get an appointment. That's a good question too, though.
Is there any data on how much each county is spending per case?
So not yet, but we are working on that. So because this has been fairly new, we're trying to be gentle with the counties and not completely overwhelm them with the data. And it's been, there's been a learning curve to get the counties to know like how to report things in certain buckets and things like that. We do something on the criminal side called an attorney level detail report, where we actually ask a county to report specifically how much they paid each attorney. And that's a really good picture. It's not necessarily per case, but it does show us how much an attorney is getting paid. CPS cases are complicated because there's so many parties and it's not always consistent how many lawyers you're gonna need. But we do think once we start getting the attorney detail report, that'll give us a more targeted picture of what's specifically being spent, say for like parents reps or child rep on an attorney, right? That will be required next year. So share it with your county auditors. We had it optional last year. Some counties did it. We're gonna make it optional again this year for counties, again, because it can be difficult, but it will be required next year. So we're kind of trying to slow roll it. So in 26, the county auditors will have to report that very specific detail to us. All right, so let's talk about plans. So these were last collected in 2023. So my latest bit of data and information is from that reporting cycle. We are getting more this fall. All the judges in the room. So if you're a local administrative district judge, this will be your responsibility. If you're not, tell your local administrative district judge friends about this. The plans per statute have to be submitted by the local administrative district judge for the county. Now, that judge can have another judge fill the plan out. They could have perhaps their child protection court judge fill it out, or even a staff person, maybe your court admin or someone like that. The local administrative district judge does not have to actually fill it out. But you do have to certify the plan. So the official submission and certification does have to come from that judge. It's coming up again swiftly this fall. So be on the lookout. This gives us such a wealth of information about what's going on. So it's really important that all the counties are submitting this information and giving us the most up-to-date information about what we have. So I will say that the reporting for this year will be a little bit different from 2023 because all of the information was entered on the site in 2023, and we don't want to make judges every single year fill it out over and over again. We want to move to a system where you're just entering changes. So what should happen for most counties who filled their plan out in 23 is you go in and you see what you entered in 23, and then you just make the changes if anything has changed. There is a training. I've got a YouTube link in the slides later on in the presentation. We did a training. You can see the reporting about how it's supposed to work to give you more information, but just be on the lookout on that. Yes.
The plan basically answers to the prompts.
Yes, we try to make it much easier, not so many text boxes, I think it's easier to have buttons and check boxes. And if you were in a county, and most counties did fill their plan out last go around. So this time it will be a matter of just taking a look. Is this the same? Oh no, we added our CLE. Now you got to do 10 hours or whatever. You make your change. And so it should be hopefully simpler, hopefully painless. All right, so let me give you a little bit of information about from 23. I'm going to give you just some quick highlights again, because this is from 2 years ago, but it's still, I think, important to talk about. So one of the questions we ask on the plan is how many lawyers are on your main CPS list? It's pretty simple. When we looked at the numbers from 2021 to 2023, no surprise for a lot of you judges here, but we did see 52% of our counties saw a decrease in the number of attorneys on their lists. Some saw no change, there were a few that did see an increase, so it's not all complete doom and gloom, but that is certainly something we need to consider. We will look in 25 and see what we get. Hopefully it's not more decreasing, but we will continue to track that. And this is just, you're not technically required to give an attorney to a parent at the ex parte hearing. You all know this, right? But one of the questions we do ask on the plan is, when do you appoint an attorney for a parent in a TMC case? And over 50% of the counties do report early at that ex parte hearing. So although it's not technically required, a lot of counties are doing this, so if you're a county that maybe isn't doing it and you're thinking about it, you wouldn't be alone. There's a lot of counties that are making this happen. And then another piece that's not technically required, you know, when a child is in PMC of the department, technically they don't have to have an attorney if they have a guardian ad litem, right? But this is another question we ask. Do you continue the attorney ad litem for a child in PMC? We have a really big number of counties that do keep the attorney for their child. 213 counties just automatically keep that appointment. So that's also good news, you know, although not required, they're keeping that attorney for the child. So again, if you're a county that's like, maybe we should do this, just know you would be in good company with a lot of counties that are doing this. Okay, so Judge, to get to this question you had about hourly rates. So last time we received plans, we did do really pressed on the counties to get their fee schedules in. The first year we did it, we were a little like, it's okay, it's the first year, you know, we're not gonna like harass you on the phone. But in 2023, we need to get these fee schedules in. So we really tried our best to get as many as we could. And again, the rates are not consistent. There are many counties that don't use an hourly rate at all. But when we looked at counties that are using just a standard hourly rate, just a simple, this is what we pay, which is not every county. The range goes from $60 an hour to $200 an hour. So it's quite the range. And then generally, I mean, the most commonly occurring rate was about $100 an hour. You know, that's the one we see the most, but there were counties paying $60 an hour. And that's not to say that there aren't counties that pay less than that, because some of the flat rates and things like that actually come out to even less. But just to give you something to think about there, we will again evaluate what we get in 25, and certainly happy to share that with y'all when we get it. Okay, so let's talk about the attorney practice time report. Excuse me, this was first due in October of 2023, so this is still pretty new. When we first put this out there, we had just over 1,000 attorneys submit a report. So considering it was the very first time, I don't think that was a terrible number. I do think that there's more than 1,088 attorneys taking CPS appointments. You know, you're always going to get people that don't do it. But ideally, we want every person who takes an appointment to fill this practice time report out. So will be due again on October 15th. Please, you know, share the word. The more people we get filling this out, the better information we're going to have and a better picture we're going to have. So last year we got a few more lawyers doing their report. We had just over 1,100 submitting a report. And so this report, just to give you all some background, it's for all attorneys taking appointments in criminal, juvenile, or family protection representation. So it's not just family protection related. So in total, we had over 4,000 attorneys submitting a report total. That's for all of the appointments. So when we look at that number, just under 3,000 didn't report any time on family rep. So they're mostly doing criminal or juvenile, no family rep at all. You know, could they maybe start doing family rep? Possibly, you know, we'll see, but that's an interesting number. And this is also really interesting. And for those of you in rural counties, this probably makes a lot of sense. But when we looked at the lawyers who submitted a percentage of practice time in family protection work, only 69 of those lawyers were dedicating 100% of their time to the practice. You know, rural communities, a lot of the lawyers are going to have to mix it up. But even in the large urbans, you know, we're not seeing a lot of people who are really becoming like full experts, at least of the people who report, you know. So again, ask people to report so we'll get better info. But I thought that was that's interesting to know. Okay, so this is also maybe also again preaching to the choir, but in 2024, we looked at all of the attorneys who submitted a report, and then we matched it with their bar licensure date just to see like how old are the people taking these cases. And what we saw is that we're seeing a pretty steep drop in lawyers who were licensed in the last 10 years. So it starts off, we've still got people licensed in the 60s taking some of these cases. just a handful that are hanging in there. And then, kind of creeps up. It looks like the early 2000s are our biggest spikes. And, as much as I want to believe that I'm young and fresh, I was licensed in 2006, and maybe I'm not one of the young ones anymore. But you see that decline from the early 2000s, right? So we're not building our like bench, so to speak. We backup team to come in, because eventually these lawyers are going to want to retire or move on. We need people to be judges, to like fill y'all's spots when you want to retire. So we got to figure out what's happening with this younger group, but it's certainly, the evidence shows what I think y'all are seeing probably in your courtrooms. Okay, so this is something that, getting onto that whole what the heck is going on with all of our lawyers and our younger people doing this, TIDC is going to be putting out a survey. I believe it's live now, actually. So we're putting a survey out for attorneys to get their motivations. Why do you do this work? Do you want to leave the work? All those sorts of things, because I think we talk a lot about what's going on and we have some ideas, but it may be more complicated than we know, why lawyers maybe aren't taking as much as they could, or why they've left. So please encourage your attorneys to fill this survey out. Also, people who have left the work, we also want them to fill the survey out, because we want to know, why did you leave? The QR code is there, so feel free to snap it. We're also going to send a bunch of communications out. Hopefully we can collaborate with y'all to get it out. The more people who can fill this out, the better the information we're going to get. You can't see this very well, but hopefully the slides get sent to you. So all of the data that's reported for family protection is now on the same site. So no more multiple sites. It's all the same site. Everything, it's a one-stop shop. And that link is up there. Any trainings that we've done for all of this, you can find on our YouTube channel. So even if you can't make the live training, we do record it and post it for later. And then detailed instructions for the plans are going to be sent to the local administrative district judges in paper and via email. And then if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Questions about reporting, really anything, thoughts, ideas. I'm happy to chat. So thank you.
Thank you. Very, very helpful. I really appreciate that very much. Okay, so we have some collaborative council members who have requested some time to give us reports to. And we had a request from Sarah Worthington from the Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid Foster Youth. Oh, there you are. Sorry, just standing up.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to give two very quick things about the Texas Foster Youth Justice Project. The first,
A little bit.
sorry,
You want to come up here so we can hear you a little bit better? Thanks.
I don't know if this works for y'all. I wanted to give two very quick announcements for the Texas Foster Youth Justice Project. The first is very exciting for us in our effort to constantly be responsive to the issues that we're seeing. Y'all may know that we have an aging out guide that we publish every other year. That is the staple of our practice, but we recently also came out with a very short, very simple guide for when minors live apart from parents, because that's something we're seeing more of as there are removals of older youth going down. There are more youth who aren't living with their parents. And so this, this guide offers legal options and caregiving alternatives. It's everything from emancipation, Chapter 34 authorization agreements, Chapter 35 petitions for temporary care of a minor child. Gives some blurbs on SAPSers and adoptions, even though the bars for those are much higher. And then there's a lot of resources in here for unaccompanied or homeless minors. So I printed off a few, I think like 12 or 13 are back here on the resource table. It's probably easier to read in a PDF format that I can send to anybody who's interested. But given the rise and increase of calls that we're getting, either by the minor who's living apart from their parents or by a very good intentioned caregiver who has zero authorization to care for that child, we created this in an effort to make the information very accessible. to both the minors and to their caregivers. So we have this available. We've also been talking for years about wanting to revamp our website because if y'all have visited it at any point, it has not been updated in probably 15 years. And so we finally got funding from the Moody Foundation late last year to update our website. And my hope is that we'll be launching our new site within the next few weeks. And it basically mirrors the information that's in our aging out guide. And we also have pages dedicated to this new minors living apart from their parents, in addition to lots of other like libraries of resources. So we're excited for those. I appreciate you letting me share that update.
Thank you, Sarah, very much. Okay, and we have Tiffany Crouch Bartlett, who is here to speak on behalf of Barbara Elias Percival from Texas Lawyers for Children.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's great to see you all here. Just a really quick announcement. Texas Lawyers for Children, I dropped a lot of these flyers around the table here for everybody. For the last 5 or so years, Texas Lawyers for Children has been doing a lot of trauma training, primarily for lawyers. But we've also provided trainings for non-lawyers, and we're working on something similar to our 15-hour free trauma training for non-lawyers, because we've been asked about it so many times to please provide something for the non-lawyers who are stakeholders here. And so we're working on that. On October 30th, we have a really exciting panel with Bruce Perry's team on the neurosequential model. We're constantly looking at different ways of reaching our traumatized children population and different models of therapy. And this is one that it's been around for a little while, but it hasn't been utilized as much as we'd like to see. So it's an hour and a half of free CLE and CJ training. And we have many more coming up in advanced mental health topics. So we'd love for y'all to join us.
So is Dr. Perry going to be there?
No, but his program director and director of special projects of NMT will be there. They will be there presenting. So unfortunately, Dr. Perry, he's super busy. But we will be having another CLE webinar with Dr. Perry next year. So we're very lucky that Barbara Elias Percival has a great relationship with him. So
For those of you who don't know the work of Dr. Bruce Perry, I mean, he's the leading physician in the country that has done work for many, many, many years on the physical effects of trauma on a child's brain. He's exposed to that kind of thing. And I remember when I first met Dr. Perry, probably, I don't know, a long time ago, 7 years ago. I was only 2. And, but at the time it was very depressing because the problem is very far the neural pathways and the way they're really affected when children are exposed to this kind of abuse is serious and severe and very, very marked. So it was depressing to me. But the good news is since then, he's done a lot of research about how you can improve that and turn it around. And that's where a lot of his work has really focused on in the last half century or a quarter century. So anytime you can see him, I really highly recommend it. Thank you very much.
If I could also make a commentary to that.
Yes.
There's a really good book that he's written, and it's called The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog. And it really goes through different case studies as well as how the brain works and how it develops through trauma. And so it's a very good explanation of what it's like for the children that we regularly deal with to have gone through trauma and how it is that their brain development has changed from that of, let's say, a child that has not experienced trauma. Very good book to read.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. Okay. And now we have Julia Hatcher with the Texas Association of Family Defense Attorneys. Julia.
Hi, everybody. I'm Julia, and I'm president of TAFTA. For those of you who are not familiar with that, we're a statewide organization of attorneys who represent parents and children in CPS cases. We have members in 120 counties across the state. So we've only been around since 2020. So we're growing. But one of the issues that we've noticed back in 2021, there was a new law passed which I'm sure you're all familiar with, that requires the court to send a child home at the end of a permanency hearing if there's no longer a continuing danger in the home or to the physical health or safety of the child. And there is an inconsistency across the state with that. President, I get all the complaints. As you know, when you're in charge of something, everyone comes to you and expects you to fix it. So I can't really fix it, but I thought, well, maybe I'll can mention it to y'all and maybe y'all can figure out how to address that. I know there's a judges training coming up in October, and so maybe that's something that could be addressed at that training. I know that the commission's done a lot of work on reasonable efforts and that kind of thing, so that might be something to address. Yeah, and then the other thing that I wanted to mention is that in some courtrooms across the state, there are judges who have standing orders to not change the placement of a child unless the attorney ad litem and the CASA agree. And there's some debate over whether or not placement includes retirement. So for instance, if you have the FPS wants to return a child to the parent, but the ad litem or CASA doesn't agree, then they're prevented from doing so until they can go to the court and get an order. And then, you know, dockets are full and that takes a while. And in all the meantime, the parents and kids don't have each other. So I think maybe that's something that could be addressed too. I know that there's a statute in the family code that says before DFPS changes placement, they have to consult with the attorney ad litem and the guardian ad litem. Doesn't say they have to agree. And I don't think placement should include parents because the whole goal of DFPS is to reunify the family and return the child to the parent. So that's all. I just wanted to bring that up to y'all. See if you had any ideas on how to address it.
One question I would have like, and I'm going to address this to CPS. I would have addressed it to Megan, but she left. But, and that is, you know, how can we gather data on that to just not have anecdotal evidence, but, you know, to see what's really happening out there? How, do you have any ideas about that?
You collect a lot of different data, and I think the hard part is what our system is currently able to capture, right? So that we can easily pull out some of the data that is needed to show the trends, the patterns. And as Audrey mentioned, our commissioner mentioned earlier, we're working on a new case management system, and I think it's an opportunity, like she said, to see, you know, what concerns are out there that require data. And if we don't have it, then maybe that's something that we can, you know, work on as we build the new system, because it's really hard to produce a consistent quality report when it's something that our impact system doesn't capture.
I would just say that I think those standing orders are really beneficial to families. If you look at it the other way, I think that it's the court saying, usually you have to come to court and the court makes the decision to approve the department's request to return the child. But in my experience, it's the court saying, hey, you may not have time to get to court, but if you are all in agreement, go ahead and do it before you have time to get to the court. So in my experience, it's actually a benefit and things happen faster because of those standing.
I think it depends on the court, because if you have a court that's like in a rural area that doesn't have a lot of cases, then yeah, you can get into court quickly and do that. If you're in a bigger county that has a lot of cases and the dockets are full and the courts can't even hear the cases they're supposed to hear timely, then it's a real problem. So you know, I just, maybe there's some kind of a balancing, you know, I don't know. Does the court have to approve the child going home to the parent? If DFPS wants to return the child and they're the ones that are making reasonable efforts to return, and they're the ones that are mandated to.
Yes. The court has, before the department can place a child with the parent, if they're in the temporary managing conservatorship of the department, I think the court has to approve the placement. And so
There's an easier way to do it than having to notify all the, I mean, I don't know, it's not working right now. It's
I
so,
see those orders as a positive for families because it lets things happen prior to trying to get into court.
if they all agree, sure. The problem is when somebody doesn't agree.
And so I agree with so I'm one of the ones who have a standing order. I think I
Okay,
was on the
sorry.
bench, yes. I think I was on the bench like a month, and I had to put a standing order in place because the child had been moved and no one had seen the child in almost 2 years. And so before a child could be moved, yes, they need to come to court because we need to know why they are being moved. The placements are being changed because we don't want to disrupt anything that's happening. We talk about the trauma that these children experience when they're moving from one place to another, even if it's moving home, because you're still in the conservatorship of the department at this time. Now, if you're requesting to non-suit your case, that's a totally different discussion for another day, but changing placement means that there still has to be some type of judicial oversight. If there's an agreement amongst all the parties, then of course, come to court and, I mean, I can't speak for all other courts, but if it's in a situation where you all need to get before the court, if it's a placement change, that's something that needs to be addressed immediately. Because maybe that placement change is in the best interest of that child and needs to be done in an expeditious manner, starting something like of that nature. But just to arbitrarily, I don't want to say arbitrarily because there's an agreement between someone, but not everyone, then that's the purpose of the court. Then you will need court intervention at that point, even if it's because if it was perfectly okay for the child to be with the parent, then the court wouldn't be involved at all anyway.
Well, I'm not talking about the next day, but I mean, and there's emergencies that arise too, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And so usually in the standing orders, I don't know about yours, but usually there's a carve out.
There's a carve out for emergencies.
Which is fine. But then what defines an emergency, right? Then you have to agree on whether or not it's an emergency. I mean, I don't know. I'm just thinking that there's got to be something that can be done because the courts are so full. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're coming to a close. Is there anything else pressing that anybody wants to bring up? And more importantly, or maybe not more important, but importantly, any ideas that you all have? We have really over the last several years tried to change a little bit about the way we've handled these meetings so that we really do talk and we'll have a chunk of time. And the commission has been very good about doing this, to talk about something that's of particular interest, particular importance, that's something we, really looked at on a deeper level. All of these brilliant people in this room and other people that we can bring in. So, and I know over the last years, we've had some wonderful discussions and very productive things that are really forward thinking, things that have to do with, like, for example, situations where parental rights have been terminated, but when you can actually still continue some relationship between the children and those parents, depending upon, agreement and safety and all those kinds of things. So those are really forward-thinking things that we need to focus on and try to think about. So please, if you have any ideas, and if you don't have any ideas, just put your thinking cap on. Think about what you think would be a good thing for us to investigate more. Then let us know. People, you all know I'm a commissioner on the Uniform Law Commission, and we're always, for whatever particular issue we're dealing with, looking for experts around the country who can come to the table and give us the information we need so that we can make sound, wise, good decisions that are going to benefit the public. And so also any ideas you have as far as those types of experts, those types of people that can come to the table or come here to present to us, to work with us, please let us know. Because we really, really do want those kinds of things, because it just makes for better use of our time and a very, very good use of the commission. So please do that. And I just want to remind everybody of our schedule. I know you all may have this on your calendars, but maybe not, because this is actually somewhat new. So we're going to have a virtual meeting on Friday, November 14th. We're going to have an in-person meeting on Friday, February 27th. We'll have another virtual meeting on Friday, May 8th. We'll have an in-person meeting on Friday, September 18th. And we will have a virtual meeting on Friday, November the 6th. Okay, and I guess those are, where can they find those? On our
So the meeting agenda.
the meeting agenda, so, yeah. So again, anything else? Any new business? Okay, thank you all so much for your work. Thanks for everything. Appreciate you very much.
That out of here. I told her.
So I'm just never happy.
I am not.
Do not